And we are live with today's SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. This is our pre-show. We will get started in 10 minutes. Look at that. We are all ready with brand new questions today for Security Plus. And I know because I wrote some of them yesterday. I was busy writing new content for you. It has been so busy here. We have a couple of certifications that are retiring tomorrow. And so everybody's hurrying up and getting their last studies in. Don't worry, Security Plus is not one of those. Security Plus is not involved in that hurry up scenario. We are good for at least another year or so, actually. So we're fine. We are good. And in the meantime, we're going to do Security Plus today. We're fine with Network Plus. We're fine with Security Plus. The two that are retiring tomorrow would be the previous version of A+. There's obviously been a newer version of A+ that has been available since March. So this is not a surprise. We all knew 6 months ago that this day was coming. So that doesn't change anything. As humans, we wait until the last minute. And so a lot of us are waiting to the last minute to do that. Some of you were smart and you thought ahead and you just jumped over to make that happen. So that was good. The other exam that is retiring permanently is Cloud Essentials Plus. That's right. Cloud Essentials Plus. So that should tell you everything you need to know about why that particular certification is retiring. Turns out we don't need Cloud Essentials Plus. We just need the Cloud Plus, which they have. So they just sort of shifted everything over into that one. So those are the two that are retiring tomorrow. If you are going to a facility to take your exam on the 25th, you should be fine because it will close at the normal time of day and then that will be over. If you're taking exams online, you have until midnight UTC on the 25th. So you have the all day 25th, and just before it turns into 26, you have until that moment to get your exam scheduled and finished. So some of you will be doing it, I'm guessing. We'll make that happen. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well. See folks checking in. Folks from Huntsville are in the chat. We got some folks in the UK that are there. The certs that are not expiring. Everything else is not expiring. Those are the only two expiring. Retiring. It's not expiring, but it is retiring. Those are two different terms. They're used in different ways by CompTIA. The retirement date for A+ is tomorrow, and the retirement date for Cloud Essentials Plus is tomorrow. There you go. So you've got it all going on. We got folks. Hey, Orlando connection. Good to have you here. I am in Central Florida as well. So hello, neighbor. Good to see you. We've got folks in Washington State. We've got folks in Canada. I got, of course, as I've mentioned before, Mrs. Professor Messer is Canadian. And by way of Miami. It's a long story. But good to have you here. Nice for you to check in. Where in Canada are you? Because I'm only mostly aware of where things are. But I think I have a pretty good idea. Maybe even better than most because I go up there so much. I used to go up there a lot for business as well. There's Tampa. There's Miami. A lot of Florida folks checking in. Port St. Lucie. I was looking the other day because I went through Port St. Lucie Monday. And I was looking to find out who St. Lucie was. Being a Protestant, I don't know the saints. Or at least having a Protestant background. I don't know the saints. So I was looking it up and, of course, got sidetracked and never figured it out. Hello, Texas. Hello, more Canada. Hello, Sweden. Hello, Miami again. Hello, South Africa. Columbus, Ohio. Haven't been to Dublin in a while. Have to make that happen. Hello, Texas and Las Vegas. The Panhandle is here. That's a very broad statement, the Panhandle of Florida. I need to know if you are in Bristol, if you're in Tueg, if you are in Live Oak, are you in Madison? Are you in Monticello? Where are you? We need to know these things. So we'll figure it out. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I always like doing the information on the live streams, getting all of those things there. So we'll see. Yes, this is the pre-show. This is not the actual live event. So if you're having problems reading the screens, that's okay. Eventually, the screen will look like this. You will be able to see it just fine. Do not worry. We are in the part where I am supposed to be doing work. I'm supposed to be checking my screens. Let's get that one lit up right here. Up, there it goes. So we'll get all 4 of our cameras going. The stream content looks good. Data rates are great. Cache numbers are fantastic. That's where we'd like them to be. Just under about 6 megabits per second is what I'm sending to YouTube, with an upstream of 2 to 3 gigabits per second right now. So we seem to have a pretty good handle on the utilization. And the cache number is, there's some video that is cached here locally and then processed and sent to YouTube. And that gap between the ID from the time when I shoot the video live and the time that it is sent to YouTube, 3% of it gets cached up. So there's a little bit of a buffer there to keep things going. If that number gets bigger, we're in trouble. If it gets up to above 4 or 5, something has gone awry, because we're collecting more locally and we're not sending it. And as you know, with the live stream, the live part is super important. You really need that. The live streams that are not live don't tend to go well. So keeping that number low is always a good thing. Thanks for folks being there. There's so much going on. Did I see how much AI has improved recently? Now you're just messing with me. Yes, I have seen how much AI has improved. At least that's what they keep telling us. No, it's not. It's just as bad as it's always been. It's relatively worthless for something like this. Now, if you would like to make a picture of a dog in a hot air balloon, sipping on a martini, okay, AI is super good for that. I really don't have any use for that, though. There's just not. So that's the way it works. What software am I using for streaming? Technically, well, I guess there is software involved, but it's not an individual software product. This is the streaming console over on the far left that you see. This says on air, sort of says on air. It says in air. There's an O in front of that. You just can't see it. That is Blackmagic's design. It is their hardware. You really can't see it, but it's down here. Can I see it? No, it's too far down. It's just underneath the camera range to see what's in there, but there's hardware there that is used for the stream. So I don't use that. AI should not be used for art. Any of the creatives? No, it should absolutely be used for art, as long as the people that originally created the very first thing that it is based on are compensated correctly. Because, for example, the screen here, this is AI. A lot of the cover graphics that I use are AI, but they are licensed through Adobe, and Adobe provides the original artist of what that was derived by. They get credit and money for it. So there are ways to make it work. Stealing someone's art should not be done. Stealing somebody's time and their efforts should not be done, but we're getting there. So we've got about 2 minutes before we get started. This is our pre-show is going swimmingly so far. We are about a minute and a half before getting things going here. So one moment. Make things happen. Yeah, AI and art and copyrights and credit and payments are, of course, a concern. The industry, I think, is approaching it pretty successfully, at least in the way that Adobe is approaching it. There's a consortium that handles these types of things, and there is digital signatures associated with it that tracks the image through. It's really fantastic. So we'll make that happen. All right, we've got a minute to go. 1 minute, Mr. Sinatra. 1 minute before we get started. Where do you go to take practice exams? Right here, of course, in the Professor Messer practice exams book, which you can't see from that angle because there's no light behind you. The light's in front. So you could kind of see it on the screen there. You need the practice exams book. We'll talk about the practice exams book as we get into this. Thank you for that opportunity for me to say that. That worked out well. Make things happen. Yeah, all of my new A+ course graphics are that sort of that style of, let's see if I can quickly pull that up, sort of that mode, that style and mode of that are all just AI generated, but I make sure the people who originally created that art are compensated properly for it, because I'm pretty big into that. All right, top of the hour. Does that go to 12? Let's see if it does. Boom. Hey, Malk, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. It's always a good day when Malk's here. checking in from St. Vincent. Hope everything's going well for you during the season. Let's get things started with our keynote. I had to find the icon because I upgraded my iOS to the latest version. Let's look for a green light. Do we have one? Waiting. I did the green light earlier. There it is. It works. And that works. And this works. That means it's time to do a live stream. Let's get things going. We can start. Graphics are all working. Let's start right now, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2025 Professor Messer SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. We get you to see if you know some of these questions and answers and topics and all of the things that seem to come with learning the topics associated with the Security Plus exam. Today, if you are here live, you will be able to participate live along with us, and you are more than welcome to join us by popping open a new browser window and heading over to the URL that you see on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you will be able to participate along with us. That's all you have to do. There's no special code you have to know. There's no special login you have to do. Just simply go to professormesser.com/QA. If you are watching this on a replay, I'm so sorry, but that link will not be available to you because we're not here live. We only have that link available when we are live, but you can still follow along and you can still make a note of what you think the right question will be. And it will be interesting to see how everybody is going to do with these. Just to see if that's working, I have a question for you. This is a question, the only question you'll see today that we've done before. It's a question from our previous study group. One of the rules, the standing rules during this study group will be that we do not answer any questions in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the URL that is on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer any of these questions. So our question today asks, a company is deploying a firewall with a separate data, control, and management plane. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Would it be, wait, where am I? I'm not even on there. I've disappeared completely. Let's see if I can put me into the mix here. Would it be a VLAN, an SD-WAN, an IPsec, an EFS, or an SDN? I'm not even sure if that's really proper grammar. A company is deploying a firewall, they separate data, control, and management plane. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Is it VLAN, SD-WAN, IPsec, EFS, SDN? So there's your possible answers. If you think you know the answer, put it in this connection. Make sure you go out to professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, we will come back to that question in just a moment. So lock it in and see if you know what that happens to be. We will come back to that question in just a bit. Thank you so much for being here. We do one of these Security Plus study groups every month. Our September study group, September of 2025, is the one that you're watching right now. And of course, when we are not here doing a live stream, we have all of the other places where we happen to be. Of course, our entire Security Plus course, every minute of every video is available on our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have a weekly Security Plus pop quiz question. So if you would like to get just a pop quiz sent to your email, or perhaps you'd like to visit it on Instagram, on Twitter, X, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, you could simply find those by typing in professormesser.com/YouTube/Twitter/Instagram/X/LinkedIn, whatever it happens to be. If we're there, you will find us there. If we're not there, it's probably likely you will not find us there. It's very binary from that perspective. We're either there or not. But if we're not there, let us know. Perhaps we need to be there. That's the way we figure these things out. You can tell me what it happens to be. So as we talk about Security Plus, the question now becomes, because we were talking about this in the pre-show, that the A+ certification is retiring tomorrow. There's a new version that was released in March, and that will be the one that continues for the next 3 years. What about Security Plus? What a good question. So the current Security Plus exam is numbered the SY0-701. That's the version number of this Security Plus exam. It was released on November 7th of 2023, and we expect the retirement date for that exam to be around May of 2027. So there's plenty of time to complete your Security Plus studies if you are sitting here in September of 2025. This is a single exam that you need to pass. There are 90 minutes on the exam. You might get a maximum of 90 questions. You'll probably get fewer than 90, but they could ask you 90 questions. The score that you're shooting for is on a scale from 100 to 900, and the score that you need to receive to pass this exam is 750. Now, that's the number. There's no way to figure out if you're going to make that number or not until you submit your exam. That's sort of how these industry exams work anyway. And the content of the exam itself will be multiple choice questions. We already did one of those, or in the process of doing one of those right now. There are also performance-based questions. We'll talk about what performance-based questions are in just a moment. Not only do we have that free course available on our YouTube channel, we have other study materials that can help you quite a bit as well on our website. Go to ProfessorMesser.com. You can find our success bundle. You can find our course notes, our practice exams. We have an exam hacks ebook. You get special access to Q&A in this live stream. There's lots of bonuses that come with that. You can find out more about it at ProfessorMesser.com/701SB for our Security Plus Success Bundle. Also let you know that we have a replay of this live stream available immediately afterwards, but I also create an audio-only distribution that I send out in podcast format. If you would like to add that to your favorite podcast listening program, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. Also let you know that if you're on a streaming audio service, our podcast is probably already there. So if you're on Spotify or something similar, you simply go to the search on Spotify and search for Professor Messer. You will find us on that link. Also let you know that the YouTube video description will be updated about a day after we're done here. That YouTube video description is updated with all the timestamps of everything that we are doing in the study group. That does not happen automatically. And even when people say that you can do it automatically, guess what? You cannot. It's impossible, it seems. The only way to do this right is to have a human listen, watch, and put these timestamps in. And fortunately, we have the best human doing it. It's my marketing manager, Lori. Hey, Lori, she's just watching this replay, and she's going through and putting in those timestamps so that you can find exactly what you're looking for in any of our archive study groups. Something that can speed up your study process and help you find exactly what you're looking for. You can find that on our YouTube channel at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. And thank you, Lori, for putting those timestamps in. We are also, when we're done here, we'll probably be over on our Discord server. You can usually find me there, ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. That is where you can chat with other people who are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus certifications, and more. And we also have people that can create an ad hoc study room and control and stream and talk and discuss. It's a great place to go to help study. Fantastic community that is there. You can find that at ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your exam, and you can certainly go to the CompTIA website and pay full price for your exam. But on the Professor Messer website, we already have discounts available. It's just built into the price on our site. You don't have to have any special codes. There's nothing that you would have to add to a browser. There's no hoops that you have to jump through. If you are in the US or Canada or a US territory, you can purchase these discounted vouchers. Not only do you get the voucher at a discount, I give you a little bit extra because that's what you would want, right? You would need something more than just a discount. And of course, we have our Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I wrote that takes all of the tips and tricks that I have accumulated through the years studying for these certification exams and put it into one guide that can help you quickly understand where you might be able to get a couple of extra points during the exam itself. Just something that might help you out. You can find out more at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier. And that question is, a company is deploying a firewall with a separate data, control, and management plane. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Is this a VLAN, an SD-WAN, an IPsec, EFS, or SDN? We're going to close the poll and see how you did. We've got a lot there that we can see, and it's kind of a mix. We did not get a majority, and indeed last month we did not get a majority either. 41% of you say the answer is SDN, 29% say the answer is VLAN, 15% said SD-WAN, and then we have 7 and 8% for EFS and IPsec respectively. The correct answer was the one that the plurality of you chose, the 41% of you chose, SDN, a software-defined network. Software-defined network takes these boxes that used to be these physical things, and it separates them out into individual pieces based around their functionality. So an infrastructure layer or the data plane would be responsible for processing all of the information going back and forth. You've got a control layer or a control plane that handles sort of the accounting process inside of the device, the NAT tables, the routing tables, those types of things. And there also needs to be a way to configure these devices. There's that human component, sometimes an automated component. And that happens at the application layer or the management plane, where you can configure and manage the device from the console, or you can automate it using an application programming interface or API. Just another way to take these physical boxes and sort of split them up into smaller pieces. When you split them up this way and create software, you can easily virtualize them and turn them into cloud-based systems. And that's exactly what many manufacturers of these hardware devices have done through the years. That is the right answer. The software-defined network, or SDN, was the answer that we were looking for, and that's the answer that 41% of you chose. It would not be a VLAN. A virtual local area network is a way to separate different broadcast domains inside of a network, but it doesn't separate out data control and management. In fact, everything is just all in the same broadcast domain. So it would not be a VLAN. Would not be SD-WAN. A software-defined wide area networking was ideally designed for these cloud-based systems that have different parts of the cloud located in different places around the world. This is a modernized version of the wide area network that is application aware, but it does not have separate data control and management planes. IPsec is a technology commonly seen with virtual private networking, something that does not include separate data control or management planes. And EFS, the encrypting file system, part of the Windows operating system, specifically NTFS, and that encrypting file system also is not a separate data control or management plane. The only answer that makes any sense here is the software-defined network, and that's the one that 41% of you chose. So as I mentioned earlier, in our Security Plus exam, you do have the at the beginning of the exam, you will be presented with questions that are not multiple choice. So the question we just did, where we had a question and then there were multiple options to choose from, that's a multiple choice question. And you could have, if you didn't know the answer, you could have guessed. You could have tried to figure it out, but maybe you didn't know the answer for sure, so you just guessed. Well, guessing gets you, in this particular case, with 5 answers, a 20% chance of getting it right. But you can also run into the scenario where there might only be 4. That gives you 25% chance of getting it right. But CompTIA doesn't want to give you a 25% chance of getting it right. They want to see if you really, really know these exam objectives. So one of the things that they've created at the very beginning of their exam is a handful of questions that they refer to as performance-based questions, PBQs. These performance-based questions are simply anything but multiple choice. It's not like they're creating some other type of way to ask things of you. It's just a question that is not multiple choice. It might be matching. It might be fill in the blank. There might be drag and drop. There might be a scenario where we have to answer questions based on that. But everything in the performance-based questions is all based on the official exam objectives. They're not asking you something you don't know. They're just asking you things you do know in a way that's not multiple choice. So there's no mystery here. It's really something that we're able to get into and work on performance-based questions. So I have for you today a performance-based question. This is a performance-based question that is looking to determine the best choice for the following security tasks. And so I have on the screen 5 different security tasks, and I have 8 different devices or components, and I want to see how to best match these up. So I will quickly run through these for those of you listening in on the podcast side. We have these 5 different security tasks. The first one is block all incoming traffic containing Microsoft RDP connections. The second one is all tablet devices must provide additional factors during login. Third one is securely access all out-of-band serial consoles at a remote location. How could we do that? The next is identify an increase in sessions and traffic transferred between devices. And the last one is maintain uptime and availability if a production web service fails. Now we have 8 different devices, components, or security infrastructure things that we can assign to this. They are, in this particular order, access point, honeypot, sensor, IPS, NGFW, load balancer, MDM, jump server. So there's the 8. Now, obviously, with 8 different devices and only 5 different security tasks, that, if I do the math, carry the 2, that means 3 of these will be left over at the end. So there'll be 3 of these we don't use. This is a common method that is used on the Security Plus and other CompTIA exams that can help you with understanding where you should have all of these different components. And it's something that you need to keep in mind as you are going through the exam, that they will sometimes have this asymmetric distribution between these two, where you'll have 5 things, but 8 to choose from. So they're not making it a 1-to-1. Sometimes that's way too easy because you can have that method of elimination. Well, this is harder to do because 3 of these will be left over at the end. It's hard to tell if the 3 that are left over are the ones that you need to be concerned with or if they are not. So it is very possible to make it a little bit more difficult by adding those extra pieces in there. So I do as well, so that you will be prepared for this if you run into it with your exam. So select the best choice for the following tasks. I'll give you another moment or two to lock in. Now, if you think the answer is already in its proper form on the screen, all you have to input at professormesser.com/QA is A1, B2, C3, D4, E5. There you go, all done. It is not quite that easy, of course. You will have to go through and really figure out what the matching piece of this happens to be. A number of you are putting your answers in now. Feel free to put those into the list. If you would like to answer the question, you don't need any special codes. You don't need any special session IDs. You simply need to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's all you need to be able to answer these questions. See how you do with understanding these types of security tasks. This is something CompTIA really likes to emphasize, is not just knowing what an access point is, not just knowing what a honeypot is, not just knowing what a sensor is, but you need to know how you would use those technologies, especially in a security type role, which is obviously the emphasis of the Security Plus exam. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through all of these and see what I think the answer is, and we can talk about it. Let's start with the first one on our list, which is block all incoming traffic containing Microsoft RDP connections. Notice it didn't say stop all incoming traffic using a particular port number, because sometimes applications will use other port numbers. We need something a lot smarter to simply block an application. And of course, we have this technology today in the form of a next generation firewall. And NGFW is one that it can see the port number, and you could create rules based on port number, or you can simply tell the firewall, just block Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol. Block Microsoft RDP, regardless of what port number it happens to use. And that's one rule in the firewall, and we don't have to do anything else. The firewall is smart enough to look at the traffic flow, understand what that traffic flow happens to be, and then allow or block it based on the rules that we're putting inside of the device. It's almost like magic. Almost, because it is a real thing and it works extremely well. That is your next generation firewall, or NGFW. Next on our list is all tablet devices must provide additional factors during login. These would be your authentication factors. Normally you would put in your name, you would put in your password, but sometimes we need more. We need to get a different type of authentication. Password is something we know. An additional factor might be something we have. It might be something we are. So those would be a very good way to go about and understand what these are. But we'll have to see, in this case, one way that you can force this type of multi-factor authentication is by using a mobile device manager, or an MDM. MDM is designed to provide you with control and access to these many remote devices, both usually it's based around phones and tablets. And as they are going out and about, as they are mobile, as they tend to be, you're still able to manage them. All from a central console. We refer to that console as a mobile device manager, or an MDM. Next on our list is securely access all out-of-band serial consoles at a remote location. That is something that can be very, very useful, especially if you are remote. Maybe you are part of a managed service provider and you need to access a customer's network. Well, instead of accessing each device individually or having to set up separate VPN connections for each individual device, instead let's VPN securely into one device, and from that one device, we can jump from that device to all of the other ones that happen to be inside of that network. Not too surprisingly, we refer to those devices as jump servers. Not making this up, that's what we call them. We are jumping from that device to these others. Of course, we're going to call it a jump server. So that's what we would use to be able to access. Now, these jump servers can also be used for in-band connections as well. This particular example just emphasized out-of-band serial connections. But as long as you connect to the jump server, you can jump around however you'd like. Jump around. Jump around. Next on our list is identify an increase in sessions and traffic transferred between devices. It's more of an analytical description of traffic going across the network. How would we collect and identify when sessions and traffic are suddenly increasing on the network? One way to do that is through a sensor. Sensors are usually used in conjunction with consolidation or statistical gathering devices, where we can take all of those sensors and then collect all of that data. Usually it's metadata. We're not collecting the raw packets. We're collecting a summary of what those raw packets are doing. We're sending those statistics from the sensor down to a collection device. This is commonly how NetFlow works. And then we'd be able to monitor how the network is performing. That way, if you suddenly see a spike in traffic, maybe suddenly there's something very different than what you were expecting, we're able to see that because we were monitoring that traffic using a sensor. Next on our list, last on our list, is the security task to maintain uptime and availability if a production web service fails. This is a technology we use here at Messer Studios, that our web server is always up and running because we have it connected to a load balancer. Load balancers are great for this. We can have multiple web servers running simultaneously on a single web service and load balancer. And if one of those web servers fails, it could be because of a software problem on that device. It could be due to a hardware issue. Maybe the power supply fails. Maybe somebody just tripped over the cord. That happens. So if one of those servers goes down, there's obviously other servers there. The load balancer recognizes when a server is no longer responding, takes it out of the rotation, and focuses on providing those services with the web servers that are currently available and still available. So that load balancer becomes very, very important, and it keeps the systems up and running. You may not even know that anything went bad behind the scenes. Hopefully you don't. It's all invisible to you. Well, that means we did not use an access point. That is a wireless connectivity device that allows us to communicate wirelessly to the access point, and then the access point is then connected to our wired network. We also did not choose honeypot. Honeypots are used to entice attackers. We want attackers. That's what honeypots are. It's kind of the opposite of what we would normally do. And in fact, you should be very careful about implementing a honeypot on a network because we do not want attackers inside of our network. That honeypot should be in a very controlled environment, but it is a way that you can monitor and track what attackers are doing, what methods are they using to be able to attack our systems. And then lastly on this list is an IPS, that is an intrusion protection system. These are very commonly signature-based, and we would load the IPS up with a series of signatures that are based around known vulnerabilities. So if there is a known Microsoft vulnerability, there's a known SQL injection vulnerability, there's a known buffer overflow vulnerability, that intrusion prevention or that device is designed to prevent any traffic from coming into the network that might be malicious. So if it matches the signature, the IPS throws it right out again. The intrusion prevention is an important part of most networks. These days, the IPS is not something that is a separate device. They used to be back in the day. These days, the IPS functionality is generally built into a next generation firewall. You just turn it on and you've got IPS functionality. Very great way to do it. something that might help you. So our answers here, just as a summary: blocking all incoming traffic containing Microsoft RDP is a next generation firewall. All tablet devices must provide additional factors during login. That's a mobile device manager providing that. Securely access all out-of-band serial consoles at a remote location is a jump server. We've got identifying increase in sessions and traffic transfer between devices. We would use a sensor for that. And then maintaining uptime and availability. If a production web service fails, that would be a load balancer. So hopefully that's given you a few to think about. There are other devices that you need to be aware of. I only gave you 8 on this list, but there are more that are in the official exam objectives. Make sure you refer to those, especially if you don't recognize any of those, or if you're thinking, what are the others that might be on the list? The exam objectives have everything that you would need to know. That is your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you did pretty well on that. Let's now shift gears back to multiple choice questions. The next question we have is a multiple choice question that asks, plans for a software upgrade are on hold until the RAM in a database server is increased. Which of the following would describe this situation? Is this a restricted activity, a dependency, version control, shadow IT, or a legacy application? Plans for a software upgrade are on hold until the RAM in a database server is increased. Which of the following would describe this situation? Is it restricted activity, dependency, version control, shadow IT, or legacy application? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. And please no hints in the chat room. So we'll make sure. We'll just double up on that a little bit. I don't think it will really matter. I don't think it has any effect whatsoever, but it's just a little experiment that I would like to try there very quickly. I don't really know if that really helped much at all. So, but that is at least something we can go through. See if you know the answer to this one. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. No, I will not sing. There will not be singing. I'm not even sure what happened there. We're going to ignore that. Just scrape that out. We're going to edit that video. There's not going to be anything happening there. Let's see how you did. A lot of people got their answers in really, really quick with this one, which means that everybody knows it really well, or we all got it wrong. We'll figure it out. Let's see how you did. The question asks, plans for a software upgrade are on hold until the RAM in a database server is increased. Which of the following would describe the situation? Is it a restricted activity, a dependency, a version control, a shadow IT, or a legacy application? Oh, well, let's find out. I'm going to stop the poll. Here we go. We are locked in now, and we can see that 66% of you say the answer is a dependency. That is a pretty strong majority. But 19% say that is a restricted activity. We also have 8% that said version control, 7% said legacy application, and 0% said shadow IT. Is that because shadow IT has changed the number to 0%? We do have to wonder about this. I'm calling shenanigans. This particular question is one where we are ready to do this change. It's a change control. It's a Sunday morning. It's 2 a.m. We've got time blocked out. But before we can even schedule it, people say, well, wait, you cannot do the software upgrade because the software upgrade requires additional memory, which this database server does not have. So this is one that is best described as a dependency, which means to be able to complete the change control, we first must do a different change control to finally do this change control. We have to process a change control update to be able to increase the memory, at which time we can then send through a change control to actually upgrade the software. Does it seem like that's a little bit much? It seems that way, but trust me, it is not. Having control over exactly what is happening and when it is happening can be the difference in a company being up and running 100% of the time and being down and losing money a huge part of a day or even a week or even more, as we have seen. So having a tight understanding, a very specific, well-documented process to understand exactly what is happening, when it is happening, and making sure everybody's aware of that is an incredibly important part. And so that's why dependencies are an important part of this. Now, this could be a software dependency that you can't change a piece of software until you change something else. That's something common you will see in many operating systems. If you've ever tried to upgrade a library in Linux, the death by dependencies, dependency hell is a real thing. It can become a challenge in that scenario. Microsoft has a way to even tell you what dependencies might be associated with things like a service. So the operating system itself will tell you, well, you can turn that on or turn it off, but you also need to turn on and turn off dependencies associated with that. And then, of course, you have things that might occur across different systems. Like if you want to change software in one device, well, maybe you need to update a firewall first. So changing those dependencies and making those happen are going to be pretty important. You need to be aware of those. And I think most of you were aware of those because 66% of you said the answer was indeed a dependency, and you got it absolutely correct. Now, 19% of you said a restricted activity. This would be something that you would not be allowed to do ever. You can never do this thing ever on that system. It is a restricted activity. This might be something that would be associated with a changing a configuration setting. Maybe it's making a modification to the operating system. There may be some things associated with that application instance that you simply cannot do. So restricted activity is something that there is no choice. You can never change that. You can't even do a change control because that would be something that is restricted. Perhaps upgrading the RAM without change control. That would be a restricted activity as well. There's lots of ways to find restricted activities in all of these. We have also 8% said version control. This is not really version control. Version control describes a way to monitor and maintain different versions of software very commonly associated with the software development process. Version control is not part of a process where you have to upgrade memory in a system to then install software. Not part of the version control process. There's only one version here. We need to upgrade to that version. Not much that we're controlling as far as different versions there. We got 7% that said legacy application. Nothing about this said it was legacy, and it was just updating memory in a database server. This may be a brand new database server running the latest software. Nothing legacy about that. And there was no mention in the question itself about anything about legacy. So legacy just means old. It's an old application. Sometimes those old applications are supported. Sometimes those old applications are not supported. In any case, they are legacy, and there's something that has a different service, a different way to maintain. There's different aspects to keeping that system up and running that might be very different than a brand new system. But it has nothing to do with this particular question. There's no legacy involved here. And then shadow IT is when people within your own organization are acting as the IT department, but they are not the IT department. They may think they're the IT department, but it's so easy to go out and buy an access point, install it yourself. It's so easy to go online, download some software and install it. We don't need IT for that. Well, it turns out you do need IT for that. There's some serious security concerns with both of those scenarios that I just described. Most people would not understand the nuance of the security concern. You really need trained professionals for that, which is why we have an information technology department. Someone else running with that as if there is not IT is a significant security concern. In this case, the answer we were looking for was dependency. 66% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another question, shall we? I've got another one. Here's speaking of security, speaking of change control. This has nothing to do with those. This question asks, all computers in a company data center unexpectedly powered down simultaneously with no prior warning. Which of the following would best describe this event? Other than catastrophic, is it SQL injection, brute force, deauthentication attack, race condition, or logic bomb? It's got to be one of those, right? All of these are attack types that we need to know. Now, if you think you know the answer, please follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer the question that asks, all computers in a company data center unexpectedly powered down simultaneously with no prior warning. Which of the following would best describe this event? Is it a SQL injection, a brute force, a deauthentication attack, a race condition, or a logic bomb? If you think you know the answer, lock it in. A lot of you putting your answers in very, very quick. This is another one where I think maybe we did pretty well with that then, to figure out what these happen to be, especially if we're working on some of those questions and working through the details of understanding these questions. Maybe you are familiar with some of these attacks, or maybe you're not. All of these answers, by the way, are part of the official exam objective. So even if you know the answer to this one, make sure you know all of those other types as well, so that you can answer questions that might come up in your exam about those. So everything on this question are things you should already know. If you don't, make sure you make a note of it so that you can go reference those later on. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, all computers in a company data center unexpectedly power down simultaneously with no prior warning. Which the following would best describe this event? I like the chat room that said, oh, the power went out. Nope, that wasn't one of the answers. Was it a SQL injection, a brute force, a deauthentication attack, a race condition, or a logic bomb? I'm sticking with the power answer. I like that one. Let's close the poll and see how you did. And we can see that 71% of you say that it's the bomb. Drop the bomb on me with the logic bomb. We also have 4 other answers here that were chosen, all of them single digits. We have a 3-way tie for second place between 9% with race conditions, 8% with deauthentication attack, 8% with brute force. But in this case, we only have 4% with SQL injection. But all of these are single digits, even though there is around 35% or so that's there, that's other answers. Logic bomb got the bulk of that answered 71%, and that's because that's the right answer. A logic bomb. A logic bomb is best described as something that is using or waiting for a particular thing to happen. So that it's setting up usually on a system, and it's waiting for a time of day. It's waiting for an event to occur. It's waiting for a process to happen. It's waiting for a user to type something in. Something is happening. And when that thing happens, the bomb goes off. This is a logic bomb, so it's not a physical explosion, but it is an explosion of data. For example, all of the computers in a data center suddenly power down. There have been examples of this. We have one in our course where we do talk about scenarios where systems have erased themselves and rebooted because of a logic bomb. That was at a bank. That's not what you want to have happen. Suddenly, every ATM in the bank reboots at the same time, and when it starts back up, there's nothing left on the drive. There's nothing left there. So you really do have a scenario where you are trying to understand why all of this happened. Well, it's because something malicious happened, and it was probably a time of day, a particular process occurring. Something caused it to go off. That is indeed a logic bomb. 9% of you said a race condition. A race condition is when there are 2 or more things occurring at the same time that tend to conflict with each other. And if you make a change in one place, it suddenly affects a change in another place that you were not expecting. Race conditions are more of a programming challenge. It's not something we normally have to fix on the IT side, but it is nice to be able to recognize it on the IT side. We also have deauthentication attacks. That is a type of wireless attack that throws people off of a wireless network. That was not the scenario that we had here. A brute force attack is one that is commonly associated with the multiple hashing of information to be able to identify a different hash, usually a password that is stored as a hash. That brute force is certainly an attack we need to be aware of, but it's not about systems suddenly all powering down at the same time. And then lastly, a SQL injection is when somebody's able to access data in a SQL database. That's a structured query language database. That SQL language is used to circumvent the web app that's in front of it and allows someone access to the data in a database without authentication. That's a very bad attack, but not really the one that we're talking about here. Here we were talking about a data center unexpectedly all powering down simultaneously. The only thing that would do that is perhaps the power going out. But in this particular case, the only one of these that would best describe that event is a logic bomb. We can assume in this case that somebody set up the logic bomb that at 12:01 power down every system. That is a very common type of logic bomb. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what those particular answers are. A lot to go through if you're trying to understand all of these terms for Security Plus. You can already tell that there are many different attack types we didn't even cover here, and a lot of these attack types are things that are very different from each other. How are we going to be able to keep all of these things separate, to learn all of those different nuances between all of those attack types? Well, of course, I have an entire course available. All of my videos in my course are designed to give you a walkthrough of all of these attack types. I give you real-world examples of when these attacks were used and how we were able to react to those attacks. The section on logic bombs, for example, is in section 2.4, my other malware types video, where I describe real-world logic bombs that occurred in different scenarios. But of course, not everybody has time to go through every single video. So one of the things that I have done is taken all of the information from every single video and I put them into a single consolidated form I refer to as my course notes. Here's a copy of the course notes. This is the PDF version, obviously, that you see on the screen, but you can see all of the text, all of the important graphics, all the important tables, everything that you would find in a video. Look, there is our control plane and data planes that we would use associated with the different parts of the network. These are all in this set of course notes. Not only do we have the digital version, if you would prefer a printed book version, we have those as well. They are, of course, identical to the digital version, but sometimes it's nice to have that printed book. If you purchase the printed book, we print these out on demand and ship them to you. So you'll get your own personalized copy, I guess. Nothing really personal about it, but it is one that is printed just for you when you make that order. And you have access to the digital downloads for free, no additional charge if you get the physical version. So while you're waiting on that to be delivered, you can immediately download and start your studies from those course notes. It's a great way to support what we do here as well. That's something you think that might help you. Have a look. You can find out more at professormesser.com/701CN, or simply follow the links from the main menu on the site to the SY0-701 course notes. Let's do some more questions, because those are the fun ones, right? This next multiple choice question asks, a company would like to minimize the chance of data corruption if a database server was to unexpectedly lose power. Sounds like a scenario I've heard before. Which of the following backup strategies would be the best choice? Would it be journaling, encryption, snapshots, offsite storage, or replication? Got a few to choose from there. The question again asks, a company would like to minimize the chance of data corruption if a database server was to unexpectedly lose power. Which of the following backup strategies would be the best choice? Would that be journaling, encryption, snapshots, offsite storage, or replication? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. And a number of you are already locked in your answers. You're jumping on these questions today. Let's see if you knew what these happen to be. If you're wondering, if you're going through this list, you're wondering, why is he asking us about journaling, encryption, snapshots, offsite storage, replication? Well, that's because all of those topics are in the official exam objectives. Later on in this study group, I will talk to you about where you can find those objectives and use them for your studies. They're incredibly important, and that's where all these terms are coming from. If you've not heard one of these terms, I would highly recommend you go grab those exam objectives. They are a very, very, very valuable study tool, and they're free. Just another nice part about having those exam objectives from CompTIA. Something you don't get from other certification groups, something that's relatively unique in the world of CompTIA. You should take advantage of that. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asks, a company would like to minimize the chance of data corruption if a database server was to unexpectedly lose power. Which of the following backup strategies would be the best choice? Would it be journaling, encryption, snapshots, offsite storage, or replication? I have to see which one we would use. Which one would you use for that? Let's stop our poll and see how you chose on this one. Oh, we're a little torn. In fact, it's almost 25% all the way across, isn't it? 29% say journaling, 28% say offsite storage, 25% say replication, 16% say snapshots, only 1% said encryption. Wouldn't it be funny if that was the answer? So of all of these, I guess we could go with the one that's the highest would be journaling at 29%, but only barely. It's sort of a tie with offsite storage and with replication. But if we were to think about losing power in the middle of something writing to a database, that could be a bad problem. And that's why in this case, journaling is what we would use. This is a method for protecting the integrity of data, and it's created just for these types of scenarios where something suddenly happens and you're not able to shut down in a normal or graceful mode. That journaling process we most commonly think about as a power outage. Those are things we can't often control. Power outage is something where we've all had this, especially if you've been at home, where suddenly you're working through a system and then suddenly the power's pulled. And then now when you turn it back on, if it was in the middle of writing data in the middle of that power outage, you might suddenly have a drive that is no longer accessible because it has been corrupted. Or perhaps the file that was being written to has now been corrupted. Wait, I've been spending a year compiling that data. Well, now it's all corrupted because it was interrupted in the middle of the write. Well, one of the ways that we can avoid that is we do a little bit of writing first. We make sure that we're able to write to the drive, and only then once we write to the drive and we'll create that journal, do we actually put that information into production database in this particular case. So this is one that I think really helps with keeping data in a form that is not corrupted, that you've got integrity of the data that you might be using. This is also something that allows us to go back in time. Since we are writing a journal before we ever put any changes into our database, if we are interrupted in the middle of a write, when the system comes back up, it simply looks through the journal. Well, did that journal entry get posted? Yes, it did. So that one was okay. What about the next one on the list? Did that journal entry get posted? Yes, it did. Did this journal entry get posted? Oh, no, it didn't. It got interrupted right in the middle. But I have the journal entry, so now let's finish that up. We'll finish up the journal connection. We'll update the database, and now the corruption's gone. That is the beauty of a journal. So that is where you can focus. If you are in that scenario where you can now have kind of that extra buffer, if you will. That's really what the journal is. It's a buffer that allows us to prevent any cases of corruption to the data itself. So if you are someone who's working through these types of problems or want to get the right thing, that is exactly the answer we were looking for. It's journaling. Now, what about these others? They all got very high number of votes. 28% said offsite storage. So if you've corrupted files here, how are you going to get data from offsite that is anywhere up to date with what you are currently doing during the day? Offsite storage had to be taken and then had to be transported offsite. While it was taken and then while it was transported offsite, there was more data that was written. If we pull that data from offsite storage, we're really losing a lot of data. We're losing more than just the corrupted data. We're losing maybe a day's worth of data or a week's worth of data. That is not a great choice for keeping that backup of that data and keeping that data available. Replication has a similar problem. If we have a corrupted database and we replicate the database, we simply have a corrupted, replicated database. And we don't replicate generally in real time. We usually replicate every 5 minutes, every 30 minutes, every hour. So there is still data that we would be missing even if we recovered from a replicated database. Snapshots are also good ones, but snapshots also do not happen in real time. Snapshots happen at a certain time of the day. Maybe you take a snapshot every 5 minutes, every 30 minutes, every hour, or whatever it happens to be, but you still have the problem that that data is old. The moment you take a snapshot, you're suddenly now got a clock running and that data is old. You could have 100 transactions occur right after you've made the snapshot. Well, now your snapshot's already old. It's already a little dusty around the edges. That's something we don't want to use if we want to keep all of the data and keep it recent. And of course, encryption, only 1% of you chose that one. Encryption doesn't help at all with data corruption. The best choice in this case to keep your data safe is using journaling. 29% of you chose that as your answer, and that is the right answer. you want to use journaling to be able to do that. Well, one of the things that you may have noticed already is we've talked about a lot of different types of topics. So we're going to start using some of those topics and things that we've discussed already in this next question. I think this probably applies to some of the things we've talked about earlier. So let's do this new question that asks, after downloading a new SSH client, a technician's security software alerts to malware in the download. After analyzing the download, no malware was found. Which of the following would describe this alert? Is it exposure factor, dynamic analysis, false positive, input validation, or data loss prevention? See if you know what these happen to be. After downloading a new SSH client, a technician's security software alerts to malware in the download. After analyzing the download, no malware was found. Which of the following would describe this alert? Is it exposure factor, dynamic analysis, false positive, input validation, or data loss prevention? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. It might be something that you're very familiar with. See if you happen to know. All of these terms, by the way, again, are all part of the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you are familiar with all of those objectives. It's going to be pretty important as you are going through and understanding all of the things you need to know for this exam. That's why I always put more information into the question, especially into the answers of the question, because you might know the answer to this one, but do you know what all those other answers are? I suspect there might be one of them that maybe you don't know, or maybe you need a little more study with. Make sure you make a note of those. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, after downloading a new SSH client, a technician's security software alerts to malware in the download. After analyzing the download, no malware was found. It's not there. Which of the following would describe this alert? Is it an exposure factor, dynamic analysis, false positive, input validation, or data loss prevention? I'm expecting big numbers here. 96% of you say the answer is a false positive. That's because we've all been there. We've all had this happen to our system. So you need to understand, of course, the difference between a false positive and a false negative. That would be important to know as well. We also need to understand these other events and things that might occur. We need to understand exposure factor, how much of our system is exposed to any type of security concern. We need to understand dynamic analysis. That's a way to evaluate software in real time as it's either going through the network or being constructed on a developer's system. We have input validation, where we are checking the information going into an application, especially to be sure that someone is not circumventing the controls we built into that application. And data loss prevention is a way to prevent sensitive information from being sent either across the network or being stored somewhere that would be in the clear. In this case, though, because we got an alert that the alert was false, we refer to that as a false positive. That's a very common thing that occurs in security systems. You cannot get rid of every false positive. You cannot get rid of every false negative. So there needs to be a layered approach where multiple systems are evaluating these types of environments so that if one of these turns out to be a false positive or false negative, you can still catch it on with this other piece of technology. It's one of the reasons we have that layered approach to security. Nothing is perfect. We're all trying to figure out the best way to combine these together. In this case, a false positive is what we were worried about, that false information. But of course, this is something that we can really spend a lot of time on. You got an alert. The screen went up. The klaxon was making its noise. The light was flashing. Warning, warning, warning. This has malware. You get really worried about it. Then suddenly you find out, well, there's no malware here. There's nothing malware-ish about this particular system. That was a false positive. False negatives are almost worse. False negatives are no noises, no alerts, no warnings, no sirens, no lights. Nothing happened. It's a normal day. But in reality, you had malware come through. But all of your systems that were designed to identify malware completely missed it. We refer to those as a false negative, And those are super bad. We do not want false negative. If anything, we would prefer a false positive over a false negative every day. Yes, we have to spend time running down that false positive. We have to make sure that it really was something that was not malicious. But I would much rather be in that scenario than having something malicious slip through and then nobody knows that anything happened. So absolutely become familiar with these terms. You will run into these when you start working in security. This will be a normal part of your life, and you should automatically be thinking when you're handed a vulnerability report, when you're handed a vulnerability scan, when you are handed a group of alerts and alarms. You should naturally be thinking this might be a security concern, but you should also be thinking some of these may not be actual alerts and alarms. These might not be real things. That would be a false positive. And that's one that you just have to keep in mind if you're someone who's working through these, especially in the world of IT security. We got time for a couple more questions, right? So let's do another one. Speaking of change control, let's do this one. This is a question that asks, a change control request states a new server will be used to enhance the SDLC. Which of the following would be most affected by this change? Would that be redundant switch connections, application development, mobile device management, wireless network connectivity, or VPN authentication? It's got to be one of those, right? See if you know what the answer is. If you do know the answer, lock it in at the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. That question again asks, a change control request states a new server will be used to enhance the SDLC. Which of the following would be most affected by this change? Would it be redundant switch connections, application development, mobile device management, wireless network connectivity, or VPN authentication? Not so fast on your answers this time. So I'm wondering, we did have to think about this one. Watching the numbers count up as we go, a little bit slower than what we did before. We'll have to see. Some of you in the chat room are looking for the Discord. The way you find anything on our site is you type in professormesser.com/ the name of the thing you're looking for. So go to professormesser.com/Discord and you get to the Discord. You want to find us on YouTube? You type in professormesser.com/YouTube. You want to find us on LinkedIn? That's right, professormesser.com/LinkedIn. That's what you would do there. So make sure you're familiar with these. This is a bit of a acronym-ish question. Acronym-ish? Acronym-like? Acronymed question? We'll have to see. This is one of those acronyms we do need to know for the exam, and the exam has a lot of good acronyms in it. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a change control request states a new server will be used to enhance the SDLC. Which of the following would be most affected by this change? Would it be redundant switch connections, application development, mobile device management, wireless network connectivity, or VPN authentication? Well, what did you choose? Let's close the poll and find out. Well, we got a good number. Almost 70% of you say the answer is application development, but is it the right answer? Because 17% of you say the answer is redundant switch connections. We also have folks that have answered, 7% of you have answered VPN authentication, 5% say wireless network connectivity, and 2% say mobile device management. Well, the answer, almost 70% say the answer is application development in this case. The real key, of course, is the term SDLC. SDLC is a shortcut, a term, an acronym for a software development lifecycle. So for those of you in IT, we don't care much about this. This is really very unimportant because we don't do software development. The computer science people do the software development. But there is this tiny overlap between the world of IT and the world of information, IT and computer science. So we have that little overlap between those two. But us as IT people, we don't really care if you're running an agile software development lifecycle. We don't care if you're doing a waterfall application development lifecycle. We don't do application development. That is one major rule for the world of IT. So that's great. We don't have to worry about that part of it. In fact, you won't do any application development if you're working in the world of IT. You might be doing some scripting, some automation, certainly. So knowing Python and being able to script things on at a batch file or a shell script, being able to use PowerShell, those are important skills. We're not saying you shouldn't do that, but you're not building an application from that. You're simply automating from that. There's a big difference between creating a full-blown application, supporting that application, and then simply doing some scripting. And that's one of the reasons I think I like IT so much. I'm not doing the application development part. Probably would not be very good at that anyway. My focus indeed is keeping the applications running, keeping the data safe, keeping the network up and running. That's the focus of IT. So software development lifecycle, being able to get an idea and make an application out of it. That idea might be a good one, but we're going to need some computer science people to be able to program that for us using whatever application development software they happen to use and whatever process they prefer to use to create that software. That process is known as a software development lifecycle, and that was the real key for this particular question, the SDLC. So application development works perfectly there. 17% of you said the answer was a redundant switch connection. SDLC is not about switching. I guess back in the day, if some of you go way back with wide area networks, you're probably familiar with a serial data link control. I think that's what it was. SDLC, was it serial data link control? I think it was. It was a signaling method used on serial links, primarily wide area network links, but it could also be used on a local area network as well. But SDLC, not part of this, has nothing to do with switch connections, has nothing to do with wide area network in this particular context. 7% of you say VPN authentication. SDLC is not part of VPNs or being able to connect a VPN tunnel. We also have wireless network connectivity. The wireless network connectivity has nothing to do with SDLC either. And then mobile device management, 2% of you chose that one. This is not about mobile devices. This is about writing applications, which is why I really don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm just not very good at application development. I am so glad there are application development people out there because they know how to write the applications much better than I ever could, thankfully. So we'll make those folks will be able to give us the information that we absolutely need. Well, I know it's top of the hour, but let's see if we can do one more question, shall we? This next question is not going to be one that I created specifically for this live event. Instead, we're going to take a question from my practice exams book. My practice exams book is a 381-page book. It's a thick one. It's a big book with lots of questions in it. There are 3 separate practice exams in here, 3 90-question practice exams in here. Of those separate 90-question practice exams, each one of them has 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple-choice-based questions, and there are 3 of those inside of this book. Why don't we do a question directly from the book, shall we? I have on my screen somewhere, there it is, a question. This is my practice exams book. It's a PDF as it's published. This book has, this is on page 14 of the book, Practice Exam A. The question is A38. Of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. The question asks, a security administrator has copied a suspected malware executable from a user's computer and is running the program in a sandbox. Which of the following would describe this part of the incident response process? Is that eradication, preparation, recovery, or containment? Now, of course, this is a PDF, so we could even annotate parts of it if we find things in here that we think are interesting. If I had a stylus, I could write on the screen. It's open and available for you to make whatever notes you would like and to save those as part of the PDF. Nothing is restricted in here. You can use this as if it was a physical book that was sitting in front of you that you could draw in. So I want it to be as open and available to you as possible, especially if you're studying. And of course, you can go through and understand what these are. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that if you want to know the answer, you could go to a page that just has the answer, A, B, C, or D. That was my quick answer page, which is on page 33. This is on page 14. So as we know with PDFs, you would need to scroll to page 33. But if you wanted a more detailed breakdown of the answer, you have to go to page 76. There's a lot of scrolling to get from page 14 to page 76. So in this practice exams book, I created hyperlinks where it says quick answer and hyperlinks where it says the details. So if you want to go to page 76, if you're on page 14, you simply click the details. It takes you to page 76. that's where you are. And you can see that we have the question at the top and we see the answer is decontainment. And I give you an explanation on why I believe that is the right answer. Now, the other thing that I put in here, and I did this because there's a lot of, well, I'll just say it, some really bad practice questions out on the internet. And one of the things you don't often get with practice questions is why wrong answers were wrong. But in my world, where I get a lot of wrong answers all the time, I want to know, why did I get that wrong? Telling me why the right answer was right is helpful. But if I got the wrong answer, this is an opportunity to explain to me how I am wrong and to teach me a little bit more about the topic. So in my book, every single incorrect answer is completely documented. So if you answered A, eradication, I explain why that is not the right answer. If you selected B, preparation, I explain why that is not the right answer. Why is it recovery? No, it is not. Here's why it is not. That is it. And if you went through this entire question, you didn't even understand the topic. You had no idea what the incident response process is. You don't know what eradication is. You don't know what preparation is. You don't know what recovery or containment is. You can scroll all the way to the bottom where I have a QR code and a link that will take you to the video that is in section 4.8 of my SY0-701 course. The name of the video is Incident Response, so that you can watch the video and be able to understand more about the question that was originally being asked. So that is my practice exams book. Once we are finished working with that answer, maybe you want to go to the next one that is on the list. Well, you may not even realize the PDF readers have a back button in them. So you simply click the back button and you're where you started. And now we can go to the next question that's on our list. That is my practice exams book. That is something that we can you can download immediately if you get our digital edition PDF. Again, if you get the physical edition printed book, we ship this anywhere in the world. We have printers located around the world, so it's closest to where you happen to be. It's not something I always have to send directly from the US. And this is one that will be shipped to you. And while you're waiting for it to arrive, of course, you have access to the digital PDF to download and be able to start reading through immediately. Usually, things that are shipped within the United States, it usually takes me 5 to 7 days to print and ship these out, and they usually will get to you in about a week. If it's international, it takes a little bit longer because sometimes this does have to go through customs. And if that happens, it does tend to take maybe an extra week to get through. Sometimes faster, sometimes slower. It just depends on how the customs happens to be for your country. It's another great way to help study, and maybe something that you can use to help really know, have I learned everything I need to know? Because I created questions in this book that have a similar style, a similar tone, a similar method of teaching as the actual exam. So it might also help you to become more familiar with that style before you walk into the exam room. That's my practice exams book. You can find out more about it on my website from the main menus or visit professormesser.com/securitype. As I mentioned to you earlier, the practice exams, the video courses, and everything that we create for this exam all comes directly from the list of objectives that CompTIA provides to us and to you. This is a free set of objectives, something you can download directly from the CompTIA website. These objectives give you a list of everything you need to know. For example, if you start with section 1.1 under general security concepts, that's domain 1.0. Section 1.1 says compare and contrast various types of security controls. Those would be categories, including technical, managerial, operational, and physical. And it would be control types such as preventive, deterrent, detective, corrective, compensating, and directive. And of course, we also have section 1.2 where we can continue with the topics we need to know. We can go to section 1.3, keep going down. Well, I got a lot in here. Section 1.3, there's the ones over here. There we can explain change management process. Look at all the bullets that we need to know about that one. So if you know all of these bullets, that you can explain what a allow list or a deny list means in the world of technical implications, then or restricted activities or downtime or service restart or application restart or legacy applications or dependencies. Hey, there's one we chose today. So those are terms. That's where I got these from. That's why you saw a question today that talked about dependencies, because that was specifically listed in things you need to know when you walk into the exam room. So that's why when we do these study groups, I pull directly from this list so that you will also become more familiar with these topics, especially if you didn't happen to see that in the current set of exam objectives. Those objectives, again, are free. They're on the CompTIA website. You can download them from there. They make a great checklist before you start your studies. They make a fantastic checklist before you book your exam. People often say, how do I know if I'm really ready? The objectives will tell you. Everything you need to know is in that list. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A already. Can you believe it? An hour has slipped by. Well, we, of course, have more study groups that we're bringing to you before the end of the year. We do one of these every month. I have currently scheduled the October study group to be October the 22nd. That is about a month from now. So October the 22nd is the date that I currently have scheduled for this, but sometimes my schedule gets pretty crazy and I have to move things around. So one of the ways that you can always be up to date with when the latest next live event will be, you simply go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you can, of course, go through all the things that we are doing, when those things are happening, and if I ever move them, that's where I change it first, is in the calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you will know exactly when the next live event will be. You can see that we have A+ study groups on the 7th and 9th of October. We've got Network Plus on the 15th, Security Plus on the 22nd. We'd love for you to come back and join us for the next Security Plus study group as well. Well, that is a lot for a single hour, but we are not done yet. That's just our normal study group. What about the after show? That's right. We have more where instead of me asking you questions, I want to get questions from you. You can submit those questions at any time using that same URL that we were using before. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you could submit questions by that tab that's at the top of the screen. Of course, if you are watching this on a replay, you might want to follow us on X, on Discord, on YouTube by typing in professormesser.com/X/Discord/YouTube or whatever it happens to be. If you're studying or you've already earned your Security Plus and you would like to earn a CEU for watching this live event, I would love to give you a CEU. The way you would do that is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Under the Contact Us link, click that link and put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, put September 2025 Security Plus, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, application development, VPN authentication. It's a lot of words, but that's what you need to put in there. And then you submit that. So here's the process again. For those of you that might have missed it, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the link that says Contact Us. In that Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put September 2025 Security Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, application development, and VPN authentication. And if you do that, I will, in about a week, turn these back around to you. You'll receive an email from me that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers as well. It's a way that you could save some money right off the top for your Security Plus exam. If you're in the US or Canada, head on over to professormesser.com/vouchers and get your discounted voucher. These are the same vouchers you could get by paying more money at the CompTIA website, by the way. We just have a special arrangements with them where we can save you a few bucks whenever you're working through that process. And of course, our course notes are on our website as well. Just another way to help support what we do here, help make other training courses available for other people in the industry, and keeps everything going, keeps those lights on, make sure that we're able to do more of these live streams. We thank you so much for your continued support. Stick around for the after show coming up in just a few seconds. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let me take a quick sip. One moment, please. Should also get rid of all of my graphics. Oh, it's much better. What was I thinking? There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the after show. That was a good session. I am constantly amazed at how well you folks do with these questions that I think are going to be really difficult, not a problem for you. Questions that I think will not be difficult, sometimes throw us a curveball. I just never am quite sure exactly what we go through that. So we will go through that. The voucher discount process is you just go to the website. There's nothing you need. There's no codes. There's no installations. There's no registrations. You go to professormesser.com/vouchers. That's it. And I show you the retail price on the screen, and then I show you our price so that you can see just how much you might be doing, how much you'd be saving, how much you'd be earning, other options for the vouchers. Some of you like the vouchers that have a retake option. I show you the retake option for those as well. So you've got lots of ways that you could implement those vouchers. If you'd like to know more about those, you're more than welcome to ask those questions. Speaking of asking those questions, well, there we go. If I could do this properly, if it was professional, it would look something like that. You can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. You could even have done it already. Some of you already have. Thank you so much. We will be moderating questions during the session. So once you submit those questions, they sort of go into the ether somewhere, but don't worry. I can access them. I can see them on my side. It's okay. I will make sure that that's the case. So we'll be able to look at those. If you want to submit those questions, use the exact same link that we've been using so far. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can submit those questions. I need to now parse through those questions to sort of understand what it is. There we go. I need to look through the questions myself. I'm going to look through these. I'm going to see what type of questions you have sent. Some of you send amazing questions. Some of you do not. So I have to get rid of some of the chaff and we stick with the wheat. So we're going to work through the details here so that we can have something worth brewing at the end of this, right? Let's keep going through that list. Let's talk about different challenges with getting certifications. Let's start with one from Mark. Mark says, hello, Professor. I initially planned to do the Security Plus exam in April. As we are recording this is September, so it's a number of months after. Mark decided to postpone as life got in the way, as did my newborn. Congratulations, Mark. A blessing on your house. This is something that that's a good reason to push back a certification exam if I ever had to think of one. So we'll give you a couple months for that one. But now it's time to get back to work. Now it's time to get some things done. Have them sleep in your lap. You can put the book right there. Maybe they'll learn a little bit about brute force attacks as you're going through your studies. Mark continues, during my study time, I struggled with a number of the IT concepts. So I've been thinking of doing CompTIA ITF Plus in order to boost my confidence in this area and then taking Security Plus afterwards. Do you think ITF Plus will be sufficient to fill this gap in my knowledge? So ITF Plus is the IT Fundamentals Certification Exam. This is kind of a precursor to the A Plus exam. So for those of you familiar with A Plus really goes into a lot of detail with operating systems and security and networking and hardware. And there's 2 separate exams. It's a big series of exams. It's like taking 2 Security Pluses because there's so many different topics. But one that is kind of a primer to the A Plus is what used to be called Mark calls it the ITF Plus because it's been called that for so long. But recently, since the time, Mark, that you postponed in April until now, they've changed the name. So they've changed it from IT Fundamentals Plus to Tech Plus, which I think is probably a better name. It better describes what they're trying to do with that. I think Tech Plus is a very good primer that doesn't require you to do as much as the A Plus does, but it does teach you the fundamentals of these different technologies. The challenge with that, if there's a downside, there's always a downside, of course. If I had to choose a negative for the Tech Plus, the negative is that it is not well recognized elsewhere in the industry. Sometimes, and I would say probably the primary focus of people that visit our website, that are watching this video, that go through the process of certification, they're doing it because they want to either get a job in IT or get a better job in IT. Both of these sound good to me. That's a good reason for going through the certification process. And that's why A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus, and other certifications are well known to hiring managers. They're well known to companies that are hiring technical people. And if you look at job postings in your area, I bet that you will see A Plus probably be listed. Network Plus might be in there. Security Plus might be in there. But it might be difficult to find an employer who is specifically asking for Tech Plus or for ITF Plus. In fact, you'll probably see more requests for ITF Plus than Tech Plus, but you're probably not even going to see many of those. Just because of the differences in the number of people taking those certs, the industry knowledge of those certifications, and people who are hiring for technical roles don't often keep track of the things that are moving and shaking inside of the certification world. So they might not even know there is a Tech Plus that has replaced ITF Plus. We see that all the time. So although employers may not be looking for that certification, it doesn't mean that the content of that certification is invalid or in some way not better than anything else. It may be that Tech Plus provides you with that foundational knowledge that might help you get something like a Security Plus. I personally think you probably don't need a separate certification to get that foundational knowledge. Maybe all you need is a Tech Plus book. You read through some of that to give you some context, or you hit those topics online, and then you can shift into the Security Plus side of things. In my video course, I do try to give some level of foundation. It's not possible to do that in every scenario, though, and I have no way to know if the person who's going to be watching the video has some pre-existing knowledge and foundation in IT, or if they're coming and approaching this as a complete newbie in the industry. Both are important to talk about, but I try to balance it out as I go through the course. I try not to jump completely into brand new topics without having some type of context associated with it. But if you've never been in IT, you may need to reference back to those. So I don't have a good answer for you. I think ITF and Tech Plus, as it's now called, is a pretty sufficient way to get those foundational terms. It's a good way to understand the nomenclature of technology. I don't know that it's a great cert to help boost your visibility with your resume, but it might boost your brain into earning the Security Plus, which would certainly boost your resume. So maybe it's 2 steps away from the Security Plus. And maybe that's what you need to help with your studies. I think that's something to think about. Congratulations on the new member of the family. And now I think I understand why you're working so hard to get that Security Plus, because now everything changes. Now it was all about you up until April. Not about you anymore, is it? Yep. Now it's the rest of us are in the same boat, brother. So that's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. So congratulations and best of luck with your studies. If that includes Tech Plus, but eventually Security Plus. I think that's a great idea as well. Let's step through other questions you might have. We'll keep going through this list. I just love hearing those types of stories. There's a reason for what we do often, and I don't often hear the reason. So sometimes I like to get a little bit of insight into your world. Keeps me motivated on this side. I don't know that I need a lot of motivation, but I think we got a pretty good idea here of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we can make this happen. And we're just going to keep doing that, as you've probably seen through the years. More on our questions that you are submitting. Of course, at any time, you can submit those questions by going to professormesser.com/QA. Let's keep going through this list. There are a lot of great questions in here. Here's one right up my alley. This is from D&D, who says, hello, Professor. How does a sensor work? We talked about sensors in that first hour. Is it like a virtual machine? Is it software installed on the device? I wish I had one handy. Part of my career arc, if that's what we can call it, I'm not sure what you would call it. Part of my career was working for companies that focused on network analysis and network management, reporting, statistics, metrics, net flow. I was in the middle of it. So I would fly around the world installing, talking about, implementing these types of systems. So I would spend 2 weeks in Scotland deploying and putting in reporting systems using these sensors and collectors. And then I'd move over to Canada. We'd put some others in. We'd fly down to Texas, do something else, and then I'd go home. You know, that was a normal week in my world of things that I did. It was a crazy world. It was an odd. I look back on that that job and think that was, at the time, I didn't think it was that odd. It's not that weird. When you're in the day-to-day, you're like, oh, this is perfectly normal. Now I look back like I was flying to Scotland and talking with people in Canada and doing a online connection to folks that are, it was just crazy what we can do here in this industry. It's one of the reasons I love IT, is because it gives you those opportunities. So one of the things that a sensor could be is software that's running inside of a switch. And you've probably seen in my Network Plus series, I talk about SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol, and I do a demonstration of SNMP on a network. I don't have a demonstration here handy. I didn't know you would ask the question, do you? Had I known, I would have brought up a some type of SNMP browser, an SNMP walker on my screen, and we could have stepped through these. But I don't have one available. At least I don't think that I do. I'm trying to think about IP addresses that I might have on my system, but I demonstrate those on my computer, on my video for that. That's something that really does come in handy if you're working through trying to understand how this works. So there's a lot of statistics that all of your switches, your routers, your servers, and other devices are already gathering. Effectively, the devices plugged into your network are already sensors to some degree. They can give you throughput information. They can show you errors. They can show you bandwidth details. A lot of information can be gathered from those. We also have standalone hardware sensors that you can plug into a network. These usually sit in line in a connection. So you would break a connection and plug this device in the middle. Kind of how they work. It has what we refer to in the industry as a Gazinda port and a Gazada port. That's the technical terms that we would use when we describe those devices. Very simple. They sit in the middle of the link. They're invisible to everybody. They're just passing the traffic through. But as they're passing the traffic through, they are examining the information, collecting information about traffic flows, understanding where the conversations are occurring, in some cases recognizing the applications that are in use, and describing what type of traffic may be inside of those applications. That's a piece of hardware. It's usually in a rack or next to a system, and it is going through and looking at all of that traffic that is going by. There's also kind of a middle ground for that. There's software-based sensors you can usually install on a server, on a different device that would provide you with a similar functionality as the hardware. So the great part about this is that these sensors can kind of be anywhere. They could be a virtual machine. They could be built into an operating system that's already running. They could be a standalone device that is only a sensor. A lot of ways to implement this. If you ever want to get more of some additional information about these, I think NetFlow is a great way to get your interest and knowledge of how these things work, because it's a technology that's been around for so long. And NetFlow is a great way to understand that sensor and collector mindset, because you can put many sensors out on the network and have all of those sensors reporting back to one central collector. That means you can do all of your reporting, all of your analysis, all of your correlations, all from one screen, rather than having to jump around the network to all of these other devices. So another great way to do it. I have some great sensor software that I've installed in my Linux servers. They report up to the cloud into a centralized Linux reporting device. It's a third-party cloud-based service that takes all of my data and presents me with reports. That's one way to do it. There's lots of ways to implement sensors and implement some way to view what's happening out there in the world with those technologies. Let's keep going through this list. A lot of great questions you guys are sending in. Again, if you would like to submit a question, you can do this at any time by going to professormesser.com/QA. And I'm simply looking through this list as I go through this. Let's keep going. Okay, let's talk about this one. This is a good question for context. So Z says, I recently got a job that requires us to have the Security Plus, and the company's paying for it as well as a retake. That's pretty nice. I think that's a nice scenario that you've got in here. Plus, you're able to take the exam once. Not a lot of pressure because you got the retake option on there. Continuing says, As a graduate with a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, will this certification help me advance into a higher role in the cybersecurity field? So this is kind of the problem that I have with the term cybersecurity, is I don't know what it is. We've never actually locked down what cybersecurity really, really is. Is cybersecurity the process of examining the code of an application to determine if the application is secure or not? Is cybersecurity the protection of traffic going across the network by encrypting that information either with a third-party encryption tool or with a VPN or some other encryption method? Is cybersecurity the way that we implement authentication on our systems by having multiple factors? Is cybersecurity based on any combination of those together? There's just no one term or one thing that we could say cybersecurity means this one thing. It doesn't. So cybersecurity in our industry, I think we like having it as a broad term because we can sort of speak to it broadly. And in fact, it's useful to talk about security in the world of technology as a broad concept, because too often we refer to security as a thing that we're doing on that one system or a thing that we're doing on that one network. But all of these have to work together. If you're in the world of IT, whether you're doing data centers, databases, mail, cloud, networking, security systems, operating systems, Linux, mobile devices, whatever you are doing in the world of IT, there's a security component associated with it. And you're responsible for that security component associated with it. We just don't say, oh, we have an IT department, and in that IT department is a security team. They're the only ones that need to worry about security. Oh, no. Nope, you don't get that. You are responsible for security. So in my world of information technology, I look at cybersecurity as IT security. So I'm not involved in application development. I think I've made this clear so far. Application developers, though, need to be very familiar with how to stop invalid input. They need to be very familiar with how to prevent buffer overflows. They need to be familiar with how to make sure that there's no way to do any type of SQL injection. Well, I can't stop any of those. I guess I could stop it with an IPS if I happen to know exactly the signature that SQL injection will take. There's some of that. But fixing the app is not my purview. That's not my world in IT security. Application developers are over there. I will write up and I will identify, perhaps I can find the SQL injection, perhaps I will see that there's a buffer overflow, and I can let the computer science people handle that from there. I could say, hey, buffer overflow, can you fix that, please? Thanks so much. Let us know when it's done, because I can't fix it. I'm not going to compile the code. I'm not going to look through the code. I'm not going to modify the code. That's not where you want me anyway. That would be a horrible thing. So let's get the experts who know what they're doing to go through the code and fix it, and then they can provide it to me, at which point I do change control, I implement the fix, and I monitor that fix to make sure that the system is working properly, that our data is safe, and that the systems are up and running. That's my world of IT. So the question here asks, I'm getting a Security Plus. I've got a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. Is this really going to help me? Just broadly in security. And I think yes. If you are in the world of technology, one of the challenges getting into the world of technology is just getting your foot in the door. You've got a really good foundation that you're building on with this question, where you've got a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. That's clearly a computer science side. I doubt you went into specifics about how to create a more redundant Linux distribution or build out an enterprise network design. That's not the world of computer engineering. Instead, that's really building the computer systems, building the hardware and writing the software to go along with that hardware. So being able to add on to your bachelor's degree is great, but it is focused on a particular set of topics and classes that you took to make up that particular bachelor's degree. And one of the things that we have found and certainly seen in the United States and North America in general is that there are many universities that will give you a four-year degree in computer science, in computer engineering, in anything on that side of the computer science side. But not a lot of those universities have anything IT related. There are very few. It's very slow go. It's hard to find a university that really has an emphasis in a pure information technology degree. I'm not talking about, they'll tell you about networks, but then you have to learn all this programming. That's not an IT degree. Universities looking at you. I know what you're doing there. In fact, that's been the way in most universities for 30 years. It has not changed. And so employers know this, and they know that people coming out of university may be very well versed in how to program. They might be very well versed in understanding the backplanes of a device and in what backplanes work better than others. But in IT, we don't worry about that. So they need additional credentials. They want to see that you have taken the look into the world of IT and that you understand operating systems and networks and security. And Security Plus does a great job of bringing that information to the forefront for people that are hiring. And that's why there's a video that is in the YouTube video description of this video. It's called How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience or something like that. That video, I talk about 4 different elements that could best position you to get that first job in IT or to get the next job you want in IT. Those 4 elements are a formal education. Check. Bachelor's degree in computer engineering. Yep. 4-year degree. Got it. Formal education. That's just one. The other, number 2 on my list, that second element, a industry certification. Hopefully something that fits the job that you're in. If your employer is trying to get you to get a Security Plus and paying for it, that pretty much is, that's a given. That's 2 solid pluses for you. Third on the list is it would be nice to have some practical experience, not just experience in school, but things that you have done practically. Maybe you have a great home lab. Maybe you've built out your own security infrastructure. Maybe you've implemented your own firewall. You've added an IPS to that. You've created firewall rules, and you've got reports that you've created from that rule set that you've built. That's a great home lab, by the way. And it gives you information that you can create a report from and take that report with you or show that report during an interview. An interview, we always talk about, and we call it an interview. It's really about you telling stories. That's what an interview is. I hate that we call it interview. Like we're supposedly supposed to be very static and we're only going to respond when people talk to us. That's not what we're doing. This is not really what's going on. The person interviewing us probably thinks that's what's going on. But if you want to take control of your interview, you need to have stories. You need to be able to explain these very technical topics in ways that the person across the table will understand. And you need to have some type of visual explanation of what you have done. And I think things like implementing your own firewall, collecting data on that firewall, and then creating reports from that data are very powerful when you're explaining to someone, because there's your story. Well, I put in this brand new firewall. I put it on my internet connection. You won't believe how many attacks I got on the outside of this firewall the first hour I plugged it in. Here's the list. That's pretty good stuff. There's a whole story behind that. And that's what you want to be in an interview, is you want to be in charge of the story that's being told. They're there to listen to you anyway. So why not have these great stories? And now that you have something people can look at, these are the types of things they're trying to do in their company. They need those types of reports. They need that type of thinking. Perhaps more importantly, how do you even know to create those reports? That's what you want to be able to do. So from a cybersecurity perspective, absolutely important. So that was third. I said there were 4 elements. The 4th element, this is a good one. You're going to have to really work at this one. The 4th element, you know somebody who already works there. What? I didn't have to go to school for 4 years for that. You don't have to study up for a certification for that. You don't have to build a home lab for that. But in fact, that may be the most important part of getting a job in IT, is knowing someone who works there. Now, I'm not talking that you have some type of relationship that you see on the weekends all the time, that you go to their kids' birthday parties. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean a professional acquaintance, somewhere you have met at a Cisco user group meeting, a Microsoft user group meeting, someone you know from a different position that you were in, someone that you've met through a third party. Maybe you only met them once, but you know them, you know where they work, you have their card, you got their contact information, they added you on LinkedIn, you know them, and they work there. That is very powerful stuff. And if you have all four, it's even better. But knowing someone who works there can be really useful. I think in my career, I have worked for, how many different companies have I worked for? Now, let's not talk about different jobs within the same company. Let's talk about right out of school, not talking about the jobs I had in school, because I worked for the Florida State Computing Center when I attended Florida State University. So when I graduated Florida State University, let's be clear, I was on the 5-year plan, but I got through. I went to an organization right out of school that was a computing company in South Miami on US 1. It was, but they had the contract for every computer that was being installed in Miami-Dade County government. I was a very, very busy person working in that first job, and I learned a lot. I worked for a second insurance company right after that, stayed there for about 5 years, went to work for and then I started working, instead of working for companies, I started working for the manufacturing side. So I jumped over to Network General after that, worked with the sniffer products, the network management products, the NetFlow products, did reporting. That also, we got bought by McAfee, so that folded in antivirus, firewalls. We had one of the very first firewalls in the industry, IPS, a lot of great security, PGP, a lot of great security technologies, working as a systems engineer there. So I got to learn the technical side of all of those products. Network General divested out of McAfee, got a divorce. So I sort of a fifth one there, sort of a fifth company, but really went back to the fourth company. And sort of it was the same company. Then went to work for Palo Alto Networks. So that was my last big company. So really 3 or 4 or 5 companies in there as time went on. The very first job I got, I didn't know anyone who worked there. I still don't know why they hired me, but they did, and I'm eternally grateful. But every job after that, I knew someone who worked there. Whether it was someone I had met when I was providing them with a service, I would come in and replace a bad motherboard, and I'd meet the people that worked there. And so I got to meet a lot of different people at a lot of different companies when I was doing that field service job. So that my second job out of the gate, I knew someone who worked there. And then when I started looking at these other places like Network General, like Palo Alto Networks, every single one of these steps, I knew people that work there. And I tell you all the time, get your LinkedIn running, get it up to date, only add people you've worked with, ideally. But you can set it up however you would like. That's how I set it up on mine. So if you have sent me a personal LinkedIn request and we have never worked together, either at the same company or with each other at 2 different companies, then you will not be added to my LinkedIn. So sorry. My personal LinkedIn is for people that are a direct connection with me. And that way I know the people that I'm talking to and the people that I'm working with in that list are people that I really do know at a professional level. Now, of course, we have our Professor Messer page on LinkedIn. Find that at professormesser.com/LinkedIn. That is a public page. You can, of course, join that page and be part of that LinkedIn community there. No problem. But my personal LinkedIn page, nope, can't get, unless we work together, can't get in. Sorry. It's just sort of the way I like to keep those separate and keep it very focused on the people and the places where I have worked previously. That is, I think, a good combination. And if you were looking to get a higher role in the world of IT security, work as hard as you can about learning about operating systems, know everything you can learn about Windows, and learn everything you can learn about Mac OS, learn everything you can learn about Linux, learn about mobile operating systems like iOS, iPadOS, and Android, and then make sure you can learn as much as you can about networking. So I've just told you, in 1 minute, I've told you 5 years worth of things that you need to learn. So 5 years of experience that you need to have in your list of knowledge, in your foundational knowledge that will best present you with opportunities in the world of IT security. Doesn't mean you have to know that, but you will be best positioned if you happen to know that. There aren't a lot of entry-level security positions. You only get into IT security if you have a well-established knowledge base dealing and understanding with operating systems and networking and security to be able to get to that point. So that's my recommendation to you. And If you're looking to do more in the world of cybersecurity, that's what I would recommend to do as well. I think that's a good way to do that. Let's keep going through this list of questions. So how are we doing on time? We're doing good on time. So we've got a few minutes left as we are approaching the top of the hour. We're going to keep going through this list. Let's talk, since we're talking about jobs, there's so many good questions in here, by the way. Thank you for sending these in. There's just too many things. We could be here forever. That sounds like fun, actually. It's from Aiden. Aiden asks, hi, Professor Messer, do you think entry-level jobs in cybersecurity are oversaturated right now? No, I think probably, I don't think I have ever seen the security market saturated. I don't think it ever will be in my lifetime, really. There's just way too much going on. The amount of security concerns that we have in our industry are continuing to increase. People are continuing to hire. The problem with getting a job in IT security is not enough people have that foundational knowledge. I think part of the problem is the way that the industry has marketed cybersecurity or IT security. In this case, if you look online, there are plenty of people that want to train you to get a job in cybersecurity. You could take our 2-week course and you'll be an expert in cybersecurity. Get your next job in cybersecurity. Well, all you have to do is go through our simple course and you will be ready for cybersecurity. It doesn't work that way. I've just explained to you that it takes 5 years of knowledge, of accumulated knowledge in operating systems and networking to even be eligible for a position in IT security. So no, you can't go take a 2-week class and be ready to get one of those jobs. You cannot get a degree in college and be ready to take one of those jobs. You simply can't do that yet. There's a ramp. You have to be able to move up. You have to level up to get to that point. Until you're level 60, you cannot get the higher level gear. So you have to level yourself up. And sometimes leveling yourself up, there's a lot of churning you have to do. You have to now go hunt and gather. You have to go learn that knowledge. You have to go through that process of knowing what you need to know about operating systems and networking and designing the networks and implementing the operating systems and working with all of the connections between all of those and understanding the protocols as they go across the network and then overlaying the security piece on top of that. That's a lot. And so when people say entry level in security, that's not entry level as your first job in technology. That's entry level after you have 5 years of knowledge in technology. That's entry level into IT security. You can't just get Security Plus and you're now qualified to be in the world of IT security. There are some entry level positions you might find in something like a SOC, a Security Operations Center. Security Operations Center it's kind of a help desk, but just for security. And just like a help desk that is broad and non-security related, you need people answering the phones, people doing triages, people determining what needs to go where. Same thing applies for the Security Operations Center. Somebody needs to answer the phone. Somebody needs to take the emails. Somebody needs to look at the alerts. Somebody needs to look at the alarms. Somebody needs to be able to triage. Somebody needs to be able to pass those off to the right people. There are some entry-level positions. I wouldn't necessarily call those IT security positions, but it gets you into that world. So that might be your way to get a foot in the door and learn more about the nomenclature and the day-to-day in the world of IT security, even if you are not someone who has gone through 5 years worth of knowledge in operating systems and networking to be able to get to that point. So the question, though, was about saturation. Are these jobs saturated right now? I don't think they are. I don't think so at all. Now, the job market itself has a lot of things happening in this market right now. It's even difficult to know exactly what's going on. And things are changing day to day. We just over this past week, a lot of the rules around H-1B hirings, which are hirings that take in the United States. We use that to bring people in from other countries and work within the United States as mostly, we've seen this implemented as IT and other technology positions, computer science and IT, but it's also used for other types of markets as well, for transportation and healthcare and a lot of others. But we really do have a big focus on H-1B within the United States. But that affects the jobs that are available to you and others. So are those new rules going to change the market for some of us? Maybe to some degree. What about the economy in general? As the economy changes, projects start up and projects scale down. That certainly affects us, probably more so from an IT perspective. That's where we really see the jobs being hired and the layoffs happening are with projects that are going on. It almost was if AI was going to give us more of those positions until people realized that AI was not what people really were telling us what AI was. AI did not end up being the amazing thing that everybody said it was going to be. I got quite a bit of people sending me bad emails after a study group 6 months ago where I said, where's the beef? Where's this AI thing everybody's talking about? All I see are really dumb looking pictures. There is, and I did that very flippantly, very tongue in cheek, because obviously there is a very significant scope to AI that the consumer market does not really have an understanding of. And that basically revolves around the study of big data. Big data is probably the most important part of the work that is going on right now with AI. Creating pretty pictures of a dog having a martini on a boat. That doesn't help me at all. But if we could collect all of the data we have about cancer and put it into a database, which 10 years ago, we couldn't even thought of being able to do anything like that. Now we have more storage than we know what to do. If we have effectively unlimited storage, with unlimited storage, we could realistically have the statistics and data for every single person who has ever had cancer. We could put them in that database. Now, use AI to sift through that enormous amount of data to start finding correlations, to start finding things that we as humans would not be able to see in that enormous haystack of information. I just need that one needle. So there are some very exciting things with AI that we are actively doing today with our development efforts and other things that we're doing in the world of big data that are going to have a dramatic effect on us going forward. But that's such a small part of the IT market. That is a teeny little piece of the IT market. And admittedly, a huge chunk of that is really over on the computer science side. So that doesn't really affect us that much in the world of IT. So I don't think that as far as somebody who's really working in the world of technology, I don't think AI is really a concern for you. It doesn't seem to be affecting the market near as much as what we thought it would be. Turns out AI doesn't work in non-big data scenarios, not the way people were hoping. And you can see that that's sort of it. I've talked about sort of the hype curve before, haven't I? Gartner is an organization that does industry analysis. They are a sort of an organization that has customers that are both manufacturing technology organizations and companies that use technology. So basically any company out in the world, Gartner is watching to see what's going on. So every year they'll talk about, here's the 10 big things you're going to see this year. Here's the things that happen in this particular market. In the world of firewalls, who has the best firewall and why? You know, they have a big perspective, and there's many different analysts companies out there. But Gartner has something they have created called the hype cycle. Hype cycle. This is the hype cycle. So this happens quite a bit in the world of technology, and I'm speaking as someone who's one of those sort of older folks in the industry, right? I've seen this cycle happen a number of times, whether it was with Windows, whether it was with virtualization, whether it was with the cloud. Now it's with AI. So you have this trigger of technology and this, what they call the peak of inflated expectations. This is so well done. This is what we saw, I don't know, a year ago with AI. It's going to change the world. Fire everyone. It's all going to be computers from here on out. We saw that with tablets. You know, the Tablets are coming out. We'll never need another laptop. You'll never need a computer on your desk. Yeah, how'd that work out? But we were in this peak of inflated expectations. We thought it was going to change the world. Nothing will ever be the same ever again. Look how fast that falls and how quickly it falls into the trough of disillusionment. The trough of, most of my life is in the trough of disillusionment, I think. There's certainly a concern as we break that down. Okay, well, we're going to come to the point that, oh, wait, this whole AI thing turned out to be a real stinker. That wasn't really good, was it? But then we realized, well, wait, there's a little bit of value here we can get something from. I need a picture of a dog on a boat sipping a martini. Well, maybe we'll start making some of those. And we have this slope of enlightenment and ultimately a plateau of productivity that comes from this particular technology. But notice that where we thought we were going to be with that technology is nowhere close to where the technology really ended up. And of course, this hype cycle is one that can happen, that peak can come up here, and sometimes you never get out of the trough of disillusionment. It just stays down there, and it never seems to make itself back up. What's going to happen with AI? I don't know, but clearly we've hit the peak already. We're already starting our way down with that. People are starting to get the idea that maybe this isn't the thing we thought it was going to be. Well, that's correct. It's not, and it isn't, and it's going to take a lot more to get to where we hoped it would be. It's just not even close to being there, certainly not at the moment. But we'll figure it out. We'll get there. It certainly has the ability to enhance some of the things that we do day to day. But as we've seen, it's not a replacement for what we are doing. It's more of a tool that goes on our tool belt. And I think the industry is starting to see that. More questions. I know we're really close to the top of the hour, but let's keep going with these. I think there's lots to step through. So many good questions here. Let's keep going through this list. A lot of you have got great questions about the industry in general. Let's talk about what we've done today and describing some of the CEUs. We talked about CEUs earlier and being able to understand what they were working on. These are, this question anyway from Mark asks, if I watch your study group sessions for Network Plus or A+, will they count as CEUs towards renewing my Security Plus certification? Well, there's certainly a place to go with something like that. I don't have the answer to that one because I'm not the one that decides what CEUs are valid for what you are renewing. The people that would be good on that is CompTIA. So let's go ask them, shall we? We'll head over to the CompTIA website. Here we are, CompTIA.org. I'm going to go to the certifications section. I think that's where I need to be. Is it? Do I have in here for my content? They moved everything around last month before. So let's, you mentioned in your question about studying and renewing for Network Plus, was it? Yes, if you watch it for Network Plus or A+, will it count towards CEUs for renewing Security Plus? Well, let's find out, shall we? I'm going to go down to the Security Plus side. Boy, there's a lot of certs here. Security Plus, here we are. Click, click, click. There is a overview, a buy now, a career path, a resources. Is it under resources for the renewals? Or did they put it somewhere else? This is how long it's been. Okay, preparing renewal. Here we are, the section at the bottom, which describes renewal. What jobs can you get? How can you maintain your Security Plus certification? It talks about renewing those and what are the options. You can renew by creating a course, by completing a course, passing a higher level cert, and getting those in there. They don't talk about CEUs in this view. So let's talk about CEUs and how CompTIA focuses on CEUs and uses them. One of the things that I often see when you're working through renewal is trying to find out what renews what. So in the resources pull down on the CompTIA website, this is over on the right side under resources, they have a section in here for continuing education. That's where you want to be. In here, it talks about why you need to renew, learn about the renewal, choose your renewal path, submit your CEUs. The CEUs and what works for CEUs are in here. Here's a section for continuing education units. They tell you how many you need, and they tell you the relevance. It says at least 50% of the course content must relate to one or more of the exam objectives for the certification you're renewing. Okay, so if you are renewing Security Plus and you watch one of my A Plus study groups or one of my Network Plus study groups, at least 50% of that course must relate to one or more exam objectives for Security Plus. Well, I think that does apply in the world of A Plus. When you're talking about Security Plus, there is a focus on operating systems. There's a huge section of security on the Core 2 exam for A+. There's a huge section of security on Network Plus. I think that qualifies as 50% of that course content must relate to one objective in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Security Plus objectives on there. Therefore, I would say that getting CEUs for A+ and Network Plus could be applied towards Security Plus. I don't think there's any question there. And you can always go back and do the math yourself and figuring out the details of that. I don't think there's much to worry about that. Of course, you are limited as to the number and type of CEUs that you would get. It's another thing to think about. In fact, I mention it here. I'm going to see if I can find the list of these for Security Plus. I happen to have this in my list. They've changed everything on their website now, so I'm going to keep going through these because I want to show you what the renewal limits are for the different categories. So the renewal paths that they have are things like this. You can renew with a single activity, one thing, boom, you're done. In the case of CEUs, you're renewing with multiple activities. For example, I'm going to, is it under this one? Yeah, right here, under training and higher education. Let's say that you have a Security Plus certification and you are attending this is qualified as a live webinar. So you're on a live webinar right now. If you have a Security Plus, you can earn 10 hours of a live webinar CEU in a 3-year renewal cycle. So you can watch effectively 10 of my courses, of my live events, and you have 10 CEUs. However, you need 50 CEUs to be able to renew your Security Plus. Total required for renewal, 50. So you've only got a fifth of what you need. You will need to do other things to get those additional CEUs, attending a conference, complete a college course, maybe take another training course. Take another training course, there's 50 CEUs, boom. So in the last 3 years, did you take a training course? Did anything in that training course match one of the objectives back to Security Plus, or I guess 50% of it? Then there you go. There's your 50 CEUs, as long as you can have documentation for that particular course. So there you go. That at least I think from that perspective gives you an idea of what you can do or what you need to do to be able to renew your certification. I think these days, most of the people that are renewing certs are doing a single renewal path, and they're doing it by completing a CertMaster CE. This is an online app or course that takes just a number of hours to go through, and it's for A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus. The course, the CEU itself, whoop, I hit the wrong link there. Let's keep going down this list. There's Network Plus. Here's the CertMaster CE for Security Plus. So if you've taken the SY0-601 or earlier, so obviously one of the earlier Security Plus courses, you can use this. It takes 8 to 10 hours, depending on your knowledge. I think it's probably less than that for most of you. And you pay for it, and you're done. You take it, and if you get all the questions right, you've done. You're now renewed. That's it. It's this one place you go, and you're renewed. The cost of this doesn't have the total cost in here. It does have a buy now link. So the buy now for CertMaster CE, we scroll down here, $200 for Security Plus. So a little bit more than if you paid the maintenance fees to submit your CEUs, but not that much more. What's the annual maintenance fee cost for Security Plus? Does anybody know off the top of their head? I'll have to hunt around on the CompTIA website to find that one. But there is an annual maintenance cost that you have to pay to be able to submit a CEU. So there is that cost associated with it. I don't have those those fees in front of me to be able to know what those are. They're on the website somewhere, on the CompTIA website somewhere. The CEU section is really, really big. But that's a good way to renew your certification is with CertMaster CE. And as long as you can keep taking the CertMaster CE over and over until you get 100% right. So there's nothing you have to worry about. You don't have to study for it. You don't have to worry that you're going to fail it. If you get a question wrong, you just do the questions again and you get them right. And you can take notes, and they encourage you to get it right the second time through or the third time through. Just take your notes and then you're done. And in a single day, you have now renewed your certification. This really helps if you are tight in time. You don't really have time to collect CEUs, or you're not going to collect CEUs. You just want to pay your fee, take the test, and you're renewed. That's CertMaster CE. That's what it does. Is it a $40 difference for Security Plus? That's what folks are saying in the chat. So versus, it's $40 for 3 years. So $40 a year for those 3 years of maintenance. Is that what it is? It's difficult to know. So look around on the CompTIA website. They'll tell you. They'll have a list of those available. You can sift through those, find the right, because it's a different amount depending on what cert you have. It's a certain amount for A+, a certain maintenance cost for Network Plus, a certain maintenance cost for Security Plus. You have to figure out the differences between all of those and see what the costs are with CertMaster CE and see if it makes sense for you or if you would rather collect CEUs. That's a lot of different ways to do it. There are other ways to renew. Those are not the only two ways. There's a video that's in this YouTube video description on how to renew your certification in just a few hours, where I talk about CertMaster CE, but I talk about all the other methods of renewing as well. And I talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both. If you're in the renewal process, that might be something you might want to look at. Let's keep going. I know we're at the top of the hour. I just wanted to get one more question in. I thought it'd be nice to have this. There's so many good questions in here. Some of your questions make me laugh, by the way. Thank you for that. Some of these are super good. And having these in here. By sensors, do you mean SCADAs? Nope. SCADAs are not sensors. Sensors are not SCADAs. Two completely different things, completely different animals. And you're welcome to read through those in my course. We just did not have the time today, unfortunately, to go deep into either one of these. And here's one that asks, well, how do you register for this exam? How does this work anyway, from a CompTIA perspective? This is one that you do need to know about. CompTIA did change a bit of their registration process when they moved their website. Now you start on their website. Their website becomes the central point for jumping off to anything you need to do CompTIA, which is good. Sort of what we've been hoping for. In fact, I logged into my CompTIA account just now so that I could give you a perspective of this. So let me flip over to this. So I went to login.comptia.org. There it is. That's where I went. And I just logged in with my CompTIA account. CompTIA centralized all their accounts. So I just have one login and I get here. I do have some training that's still stuck in here. I have an old Network Plus student guide that's in here. But if you purchase a CompTIA product, this is the page you see it on. So if you buy the discounted CompTIA products on my site for Security Plus, maybe you get Security Plus Learn, CompTIA CertMaster Learn, or CertMaster Practice, they will show up here because they're CompTIA's products. This is also where you manage exams and schedule and manage exams right there. And if you're someone who needs test accommodations, maybe you have a hearing problem, maybe you have a vision issue, maybe you need extra time because English is not your first language, you can request test accommodations from here as well. This is where you schedule your exam. So I'm not going to scroll down. My personal information is in this list, but this is where you would schedule these exams. Maybe I'll go to the next page. Although I'd love to show you my personal details. Stop on by anytime. Do not stop by. Bad idea. From here, once you provide them with those details, and I look at the screen and make sure there's nothing on here I need to know about or need to worry about, that this is one I can go through. Let's get rid of some of the clutter that's on this screen. So from here, it's the dashboard. And from here, I can schedule my exams. Now, what they did in the background, even though it says CompTIA here, and I logged in at login.comptia, and I clicked the link for scheduling the exams, This really takes me to Pearson VUE right up here. So you've already gone over. Pearson VUE is the one company that CompTIA partners with to give the exams. So they take you over to Pearson VUE where you can view the exams and set up your exam. So let's do Security Plus. Here are all the CompTIA exams. Let's do a Security Plus certification exam. Yep, it's the 701. I'll click that. Do I want it at a test center or do I want it online? I want it in a test center. And you just go through this process. It shows you available times. Let me make sure my personal information is not going to be here. It says, once I click test center, it says we need your photo ID once you get there. So have that available when you go, what you should expect. And here's the personal items you cannot have during testing unless you get prior approval. So, okay, that sounds good. I'm going to click the next button. It says, what's my preferred language? We have English, Japanese, Portuguese, Brazilian, or Spanish Modern, or Thai. So you've got some options there from a language perspective to be able to do that. And then am I temporarily in another country? Do I plan to take that exam outside of my country of current residence or my country of citizenship? This sometimes happens, especially if you are in a job where you're sometimes out of the country and you want to take the exam there. You have to tell them that and they have to approve it. So they're asking the question here to avoid any problems later. I'm going to say, no, I am not. And then they give you a big list of the testing policies. So you've been warned. Here's the cancellation policy. Here's the candidate agreement. Here's how you can share your certification information. I'm then going to click the agree button. I'm flipping over because, and I'm glad I did because right there has my address right at the top of the page. There you go. So there you go. That is not what, but from there you then put in, it shows you a list of available times that you could schedule for this. And there it goes. I thought, why am I they're not going to show anything on the screen, right? Why do I have to keep, no, glad I did. Glad we swapped back and forth on that one. That's sort of how it works. The process is very simple. It's very easy to step through, very easy to register yourself. And it's one that, and you may not even realize, once you have booked your exam, you can use that same interface to change the times. So if you're getting a couple of days before the exam and you're thinking, I really am not sure about this, maybe I should push it a week, you can go online and push it a week. So you've got flexibility. Just make sure when you book your exams and make sure when you change any exam dates that you check very carefully that it took. This happens more often than you might think, where somebody thinks they made a change to their exam. It didn't actually take. The original date came and went. They didn't show up and you lose your voucher. You lose the money you invested. Do not be in that position. If you are placing exams online or you're changing dates with your exam, take screenshots, read the screens very carefully, confirm in an email that the change has been made, have that documentation available. That will avoid any problems in the future. I promise you that will be important. And more important than you even realize. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more information to step through. Let's do one more in this list. Can you tell I have to do laundry today? I'm sort of stalling. I think that's what's going on here. I think it's me procrastinating, but I'm procrastinating with you. I'm blaming you for it. You're enabling this, just so you know. We got one more question we can get in this list. We're going to find out if this happens. In this list, I think this is such a broad question and it's such a common question that I really want to address it. It's from Colin. Colin asks, is CompTIA A+ enough to land an entry-level IT job? I just passed mine. This is in some ways misunderstood in this industry. So I'm going to give you my perspective of this just so you understand where we go with getting these jobs in IT. I think, and I'll approach it from that perspective, we're going to approach this question as someone who is either looking to get a job in IT or looking to get a better job in IT. I understand that's not 100% of people who are getting certifications or those studying for certifications, but I think the vast majority of you, that's why you get a cert. So we're going to go from that perspective. There is no easy button. There's no magic wand. There is no one thing you would do that guarantees you a job in IT. Nothing will give you that. This is not like some other types of businesses or vertical markets where you get licensed to do something. Therefore, the moment you are licensed, you are eligible to get a job doing that thing, or you can immediately start doing that thing as an independent person. In IT, we don't have that level of licensing on a rail. Maybe the government hasn't figured that out yet, because as soon as they do, we will all need to license ourselves as IT professionals. But right now, they don't. So there's also no single set of credentials that the industry interprets as being a universal credential for IT. They don't exist. Mostly because IT is a big field with many different areas. You might be working in big data. You might be working with databases. You might be working with networking. You might be doing IT security. Your focus might be operating systems, or it might be only Active Directory, or it might be encryption technologies, or it might be data centers, or it might be email. Your focus might be on cloud automation. See what I mean? Like, that is a broad set of things that you could possibly do in the world of technology, and you will not do all of those in your career. You will pick one or two or three of those, and that's what you will focus on for your career. It's very unusual to kind of everybody knows everything about everything. You're not going to find that. That's not something that really works that way. But when you get into the world of IT, you tend to focus on an area. Most of the time you start very generalized. That's what I did. I was a field service technician. My focus was break fix for computers. So if somebody's memory gave out, if they had a problem with their storage drive, if they needed a motherboard replaced, or they wanted to upgrade any of those components, I would be sent to their facility. I would take apart their machine on their desk. I would pull their motherboard out. I would take the new motherboard out of the box that I brought. I would put the motherboard in. We'd screw everything in. I'd put all the wires back. We put the cover back on. We turn it on, and I go to the next thing. So that was a niche that I got very good at. I could do this very quickly. I knew all the things you needed to do. You've probably seen this. If somebody's replaced a laptop motherboard and they're really familiar with the process, they don't even think about it. Zip, 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 zip. They're doing it automatically. They take out those screws. They pull the screws out. The motherboard pops out. They've got it moving like a Lego. They're just boop, boop. It's very modular. And they put it all back together. They even got all the screws in the right place. They put on the cover. They're finished. And they're off to the next thing. So you start to get very good in these niches. But then that gets you, well, if you're working with the hardware, when the system boots up, you need some familiarity with Windows. And you become more familiar with the Windows operating system, then maybe you want to do more desktop management of Windows, and you get a new job working with Windows. Now you're not replacing motherboards anymore. Now you're working more with keeping Windows up and running on the desktop. And when people get a blue screen of death, you're able to fix that. When people need to connect properly to a Windows service, you can fix that Windows service. When somebody needs to make sure their Active Directory is working properly, you can make sure that all of those hooks are in place and that it's talking properly to the Active Directory database. And then eventually you'll start getting into troubleshooting these problems, and maybe that takes you into understanding what's happening on the network. You start doing more packet captures. You start learning more about the network process, and that leads you into the networking field, where suddenly you've gone from field service. Now you've worked with operating systems. Now you're learning about the way these operating systems talk amongst each other. So you can start to see how the industry leads you down this path of learning more, moving up. You're leveling up as you go through each of these. And so there is no one path for everyone. Everybody starts at a different place. Everybody has different interests. Maybe instead of operating systems and networking, maybe you were more interested in Linux and the cloud. Maybe you were more interested in mobile technologies and working with mobile device managers. So those would take you in a different direction, and probably would lead you down a completely different path of your career. You often have control over this. You sometimes do not. But in IT, you have the ability to recreate yourself if there's a technology that especially interests you. I think that's really what I did in my career. As I started in the field service side, I got really interested in operating systems and technologies around the OS. But the thing that really changed my career, I think, is one day I walked into work and I was not on the server team. I was on the desktop management team. Those servers were in this room. There was glass around the room. Only certain people could go into the server room. It was the data center for the facility. I was not allowed. It was fascinating to me, though, and I knew that's something I had some interest in. But then somebody brought in a new product called a sniffer. It was a protocol analyzer. It connected to the network, and it showed you everything going across the network. And to me, that was fascinating. Suddenly, I was able to view a perspective of this technology that I'd never seen before and had no idea the level of intricacy associated with it. And I just dived right into the packets. And it was very difficult at the time to find a lot of information on protocols. We basically went to the bookstore. We went to the bookstore and found technology books that talked about these things, that would give us more information about the way that these operating systems talk to each other and what those protocols look like and how do these different transport protocols operate versus the applications that are going across these networks. That was interesting enough to me to dive into that. And that led me into more networking, led me into protocol analysis, network management, reporting, analytics, and ultimately having that level of knowledge about what was happening under the surface gave me the foundational knowledge that I needed to jump into the world of IT security. And I think that is a very common path. It's a very normal path, but it doesn't have to be your path. You can get there any other way you would like. Maybe you start in the cloud, and the cloud is where you learn all of your security and networking and applications. That's where you cut your teeth. That absolutely positions you to do extremely well in the world of IT security. So I really think that we sometimes focus on, what do I do first? What do I do next? What do I have here? Do I need that cert? I need to get this cert. Once I get that cert, I can do this thing. That is a good strategy, and you should have a strategy, but it's not the only strategy. This is not, your career is not on a rail. It's not where you're at this spot, and then you have to go to the next block, and then you have to go to the next block, and it has to follow that path. That's not true. In IT, you almost never follow the path you set. This industry changes so quickly, and so much changes so fast under your feet that you could never stay in one place or simply watch the world go by because it's moving way, way, way too fast. You're going to have to keep learning. You're going to have to keep up with all of these different technologies. After all, let's go back 2 years. Who was talking about AI? Nobody. Now suddenly it's everything, it seems. The hype curve is up there. I'm waiting for the hype curve starting to drop now. So I think that's where you need to focus your efforts on kind of a combination of, what do employers want me to do? What do I want to do? And those will be a very nice synergy as you go throughout your career. This synergy will change often. You'll become very knowledgeable in protocols and networking and setting up switches and routing and designing the networks. It'll just be second nature to you. You've done so many of them in so many different places. It almost becomes cookie cutter to you. You can solve the tough problems so easily now. That means you're in the wrong place. Now let's move up to another level. You've leveled up. Don't stay at that level. You keep leveling up, because every time you level up, you gain knowledge. You gain leverage from a career perspective. You probably gain money because you are now more valuable as an employee. And all of those together give you more flexibility in where you want to live, the type of job you want to have, and how that job is made up, what the construction of that is in your career, what that job happens to be. Do you travel a lot? Do you travel none? Is it a remote job? Is it all in the office? You get the flexibility the more you know. You don't have any of that flexibility when you start out. You will do what they tell you to do, and you will do it where they tell you to do, and you don't have much of a choice because you don't have the knowledge yet. But as you gain the knowledge, you will suddenly have people go, well, we can give you a little bit extra money for that. Oh, we can, if you want a job that travels a lot, we have one of those, and there's a lot of things you can do at that point. So you need to position yourself in your career as someone who is both interested in getting knowledge of things that make you valuable to someone hiring or giving you a better job, but you should also find those types of technologies that interest you, because that will keep you motivated as you step through all of those. So it really is. And as far as people are even saying, okay, well, that's great. This strategy is good. How do I get a job in IT with no experience? Go back to the video. It's part of this video, how to get a job in IT with no experience. Those 4 elements: formal education, industry certification, some type of practical experience, and you know someone who works there. You should be creating a strategy right now with all 4 of those things in it. I guarantee you one of those things you haven't even thought about yet. Maybe someone who works there. How would you ever find someone who works there? Well, you'd be surprised how easy it is. Have you gone to a local regional IT show? They happen all the time. You should go to one. Have you gone to a Cisco user group meeting, a Microsoft user group meeting, a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting, a Fortinet user group meeting? Have you been there? That's where all these people are. And you just need to meet them. You don't have to hang out with them necessarily. I mean, if they're nice, you can. I mean, they probably are. They probably have a lot of great knowledge. And the more you talk to them, have Coca-Cola between each other. Just talk about that industry, what you do, what is it you do there, and who you're hiring, and what would you recommend I do to be able to qualify myself to work in an entry-level position in your organization? Simple question. What would you recommend that I do to be able to qualify to put a job posting in your company? That's it. And they're going to give you lots of intel, lots of information, and now you start on your strategy. This strategy is not just where you want to be today. It's not just where you want your next step to be. Maybe you look 2 or 3 steps ahead. And I like that people are often telling me, I'd love to do something in security. I'd love to do something with designing networks. I would love to be part of that big data push that's happening right now. Fantastic. You've already solved one of your biggest problems, which is, what are you striving for? What are you working towards? What is that big picture? Now, will you get to that level at some point? You might. You probably will if you keep working on it. The problem, of course, is the industry and the floor keeps moving underneath your feet. So by the time you're at a point, and this happened with me, where I was deep in the world of protocol analysis, network troubleshooting, net flow, reporting, analytics, and making networks smarter, someone calls me from out of the blue and says, hey, you want to go work for a company that has a next generation firewall? And I said, what's a next generation firewall? No one's ever heard of that before. The industry doesn't have a term called next generation firewall. And they said, well, they do now. This is the first one. Nobody's ever seen it. It's never been sold. You can be on the bottom floor. You want to be a technical person who's working with something that nobody's ever seen before? Like, sign me up. Let's go. And suddenly you're redirected. So even the best laid strategies sometimes get pulled in a different direction, sometimes for bad, and sometimes in that case for really, really good. You just never know. That's one of the great things about IT. It's one of the reasons I make these courses. That's one of the reasons these are introductory courses, A+, Network+, Security+, and others, so that we can get you into this industry, which I believe will give you a lifetime of career, lifetime flexibility, a lifetime of payments, profits, salaries, bonuses, flexibility, time with your family, fun things that you can do, great work, problems that can be solved, a satisfying job working for fantastic companies. That's what we do in IT. Hopefully that's what you're thinking of doing in IT as well. Thank you so much for joining us in these study groups. It's our last study group of September. Next month, we start in with our A+, Network+, and Security+ study groups again. Of course, our entire Security+ course is available on our website, along with our course notes, our practice exams, and so much more. We're always adding to the list. There's always something interesting going on. We sure appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us in the first hour and listening to my questions. Thank you for being here in the second hour and giving me your questions. Such a nice back and forth. I'll be over on the Discord side for the rest of the day. You're welcome to join us at professormesser.com/Discord. Thank you for being here. We will see you next time on the Security+ Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.